Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Yeah, sorry about that. A couple of technical little things that come our way every now and again. Thank you to Julia. A man with a spanner has just fixed all the gubbins, and we are good to go. It's another busy one. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announcing new strict rules, planning to crack down on illegal immigration. She will announce UK visa bans for countries that refuse to take back migrants, alongside seizing valuables from small boat arrivals to help with the cost of accommodation. I mean, that's a whole new one on me. We'll come to that in a second. Also this afternoon, at least 500 civil servants now working government diversity roles, with numbers doubling in some departments since Labour took office. This took a 2-year freedom of information fight by a Tory MP to get the detail. And to make it worse, it's likely to be an underestimation, as some departments actually refuse to answer. You can't make this guff up. And the UK Health and Security Agency has warned eco-fear, eco-anger and eco-grief, yeah, these are all things apparently, are harming mental health, linking climate stress to depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance misuse and violence. These are the people that think the world's going to end because it got warmer. More on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. Can Shabana Mahmood save the Labour Party? Can she solve the immigration crisis? The Home Secretary is as mad as hell, and she ain't going to take it anymore. Shabana Mahmood wants to go full-on Danish. She's got a raft of new measures which she thinks will not only work, but will actually mark out Labour as the country that is the strictest on planet Earth when it comes to asylum. She's going to take and make the Tories look like the Green Party. She's going to make reform look like the Liberal Democrats. She has a nuclear option, and she's going all guns blazing to sort it out. Mahmood is in no mood for superficial answers. She's got a grand plan. The problem is simple, of course. It is this: across Europe, asylum claims are falling, but in Britain, they are rising. The answer, however, is always a little more complex. But she reckons she's onto a winner. You decide. So there's loads of bits to this, and we will hear her speak in the Commons later. But essentially, countries that refuse to take back illegal migrants in Britain will face visa bans. These are places like, and there's a whole list there, but in predominantly top 3, Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo, unless there is rapid improvement in the number of returned migrants that are accepted by those countries. Currently, by the way, 4,000 awaiting deportation just to those countries, and there's more on the list as well. Somalia, Bangladesh is there, Iran, Egypt too. Let's have a little listen then. This is a warm-up, if you like, to what the Home Secretary is going to be talking about this afternoon. Here she is.
On Monday, I will announce the most significant changes to our asylum system in modern times. Today, I want to tell you why. Across Europe, asylum claims are falling, but in Britain, they are rising. In the last 4 years, 400,000 people claimed asylum here. Over 100,000 are housed and supported at taxpayers' expense.
I mean, just let those figures settle for a second. How this gets such a free pass from people mainly on the left is mysterious. In 4 years, 400,000 people, just slightly more actually, so we're nudging to the 500,000 mark, claimed asylum over here. Over 100,000 are now housed and supported at taxpayers' expense. Now, is there anyone in the room? Stick your hand up if you think that's sustainable, if you can carry on doing that for the rest of the time. Fast forward another 5 years. What do those numbers look like then? Well, presumably, that will be nearly 1 million people claiming asylum, and a quarter of them completely housed and supported by the taxpayer. And probably in all in all probability, either in very, very low-skilled jobs or not working at all. So there's that aspect to this. Can she really solve this? Do you believe Shabana Mahmood can solve the immigration crisis? 0344 499 1000. There's also this, asylum seekers with assets, and this is bizarre. I'd never even thought about this, such as jewellery, cars. Who comes over on a dinghy with a car? Yeah, it's 27 of us, mate, and a Ford Fiesta. Really? E-bikes will be required to contribute towards their taxpayer-funded bed, board and financial support. You might think so. One Border Force Security Minister called Alex Norris said the Home Office would not seize family heirlooms, but if a migrant arrived with a bag full of gold rings, they would have to pay towards their asylum support. This proposal mirrors what they've done in Denmark, where police have powers to seize valuables of worth more than £1,000 from refugees to cover the cost of housing and for food. Is all of this likely to work? 0344 499 1000. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, you might not be surprised to hear, has said tinkering around the edges, as Labour proposes, won't work. Only the Conservatives have a proper plan to leave the ECHR and deport all foreign criminals and illegal migrants. Labour is living in fantasy land, he said, with these half measures that are no more likely to work than their previous failed smash the gangs gimmick. So who's right on this one? 0344 499 1000. Those numbers are big. The Home Secretary herself said it. She is sounding more forthright on this than probably any other Labour voice has sounded. But do you believe her? Do you trust her? Is she going to sort this thing out? If you look back in a year's time, if you look back to where we've been, will we see not just a few improvements, not like those kind of Rwanda figures, you know, where 4 volunteers went back to Rwanda? I appreciate the scheme never got off the ground, but you take the point. Will we see tens of thousands of people that are removed because they should not be in this country? 0344 499 1000. Is Shabana Mahmood going to be the first Home Secretary in the last decade to finally sort out the asylum crisis? Your thoughts on that? Let's get a word on this story and the other big ones of the day. Alex Dean is with us, consultant and political commentator. Good to see you, Alex.
Hi, Ian. Good to see you.
And let's start then with the Home Secretary. This afternoon, around about 3:30, she's going to make a big announcement. I've gone through some of the detail that is likely to come up. Let's have a reminder of the sort of things she's likely to say.
In the last 4 years, 400,000 people claimed asylum here. Over 100,000 are housed and supported at taxpayers' expense, putting huge pressure on local communities. We need to reduce the numbers coming here illegally. We need to remove more people who have no right to be here. We will always be a country that gives sanctuary to those fleeing danger, but we must restore order and control.
But do we believe her, Alex?
Well, look, like it or not, they are the government for the next 4 years, and therefore I wish them all the best and every success in this. I agree with Chris Philp's criticism that it would be better to leave the ECHR, but they are the government, the Labour Party won a majority, and now they are bringing out these policies, which I think are actually quite compelling. On the withdrawal of visa permissions to countries that don't take back their own citizens who have failed asylum seekers, I suppose the point is, yeah, okay, Angola may shrug, the DRC may shrug, but Namibia, which benefits hugely from tourism, including from the United Kingdom, will take it very seriously. And that's the point with these things. You've got to press a lot of buttons and see what lights up. And it seems that this Home Secretary, unlike the last one, is willing to give it a go. Well, I wish her all the best, because we've got to stem the tide of people coming to this country. What you just set out was really stark, Ian. 100,000 people a year for asylum status. I'm from a market town in Suffolk called Bury St Edmunds, population 40,000. 2.5 times the number of people from my hometown. 2.5 times the number of people I grew up with. Everyone I knew are coming to this country every single year. It's utterly unsustainable. I welcome this Home Secretary's rhetoric, and I would point out, one, it might work on the individual policies, but two, it sends a real message Britain is a less attractive market for you now, and that is to be welcomed.
That's how it should be, of course. But you know the obvious hurdles, Alex, are there. There'll be lawyers already sharpening their quills, ready to write up the case against this. But, of course, perhaps more troubling for the Home Secretary are those on her own back benches who will be very, very grumpy to hear a Labour Home Secretary talk in these kind of tones. Yeah,
Ian, I think we're going to see some resignations today. I think we will see some minor Labour figures saying that they cannot follow Starmer and Mahmood down this path.
Yeah.
If they are smart, the government will say, thank you very much for your service, bye-bye. Because if they want to stay relevant in politics today, and if they want to have a chance of winning the next election, they've got to deal with this issue. Everyone can see the polling. It is one of the most vital issues in the country. And so they're going to have to ignore a hit today. They've got an enormous majority. They can take it. But I think they're going to have resignations as a result.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's move to this story then, Alex. DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion is still a boy. You know, everybody said the bonfire of the quangos. You know, we're going to get rid of all the nonsense. And, of course, any new government comes in, they do get rid of those quangos, but then they just replace them with other quangos that are more to their kind of stripe or flavour of individuals and politics. But apparently DEI is alive and well. 500 civil servant gigs where people are employed across government to police and develop diversity, equality and inclusion. And there's a lot to this as well. These, by the way, were just the figures they could get from the FOI request, because some departments refuse to answer the question, which I find slightly curious. But let's have a listen to Reform UK's plans for DEI, since they've claimed they've slashed 331 million quid in the last year or so. Here's Nigel Farage.
We are going to be quite radical. Work from home, forget it. If you're a DEI officer, I suggest you look for another job. So things are going to be different. We can't wave magic wands. We don't pretend to, but it'll be a very different approach to local government.
It is kind of interesting in the sense that this, I thought by now, we'd have got our heads around this one, Alex, and governments would have gone, well, we don't really need these roles anymore, even if they did have some value once upon a time, which personally I doubt. But surely we're in a place now where we can, you know, move on.
Yeah, first of all, it is disgraceful for a body of government not to respond to a Freedom of Information Act request. It is the law in this country, and if other people did it, they would suffer the consequences. It's completely wrong for a government body to decline to answer it. And as you rightly say, the number would be higher if they got the full picture. Second point is this: you can answer even people who are deeply concerned about diversity, equality and inclusion in this country. You can point out that it won't really have value unless it's inculcated in the leadership of organisations. You don't need an officer to stand for and embody it. It should be a value in the executives who lead that organisation. And therefore, either from the critical or supportive perspective, the right number of people who are actually employed to be DEI officers should be zero.
Yeah, and we're all grown-ups really now, aren't we? And certainly there's already existing laws in place. If you are discriminating against somebody and it was demonstrably a better candidate and somebody said, well, I don't like them, it turns out they're a lesbian or something, or the wrong religion, you know, that's already illegal. So that box is already ticked. And I thought we'd grown up to the point now where we can reasonably say we give the best person the job.
Well, how can we possibly expect to trust councils who are going to say that they're going to implement DEI policies upon us when they can't respect FOI laws that are already in place? So really, it seems to me these councils, one, should get their houses in order and respond to Freedom of Information requests, and two, strip out these officers, because I'll just make the point, every party should be trying to ensure that we've got more efficiency and lower costs in government, both national and local. This seems a very easy one to remove. And by the way, the Home Secretary's also removed our police and crime commissioners this week to the tune of many millions of pounds of saving. You would think this one could go the same way.
Yeah, indeed. And, you know, it is kind of interesting when you look at, you know, if diversity is the name of the game, you look at this current government, you look at the last Conservative government, I think there is, and bearing in mind, you know, governments are meant to reflect, the population, they're meant to reflect policy intent, fairness and all that kind of stuff. Nobody could criticise the last Tories or this Labour government and say, well, they're not exactly all pasty white men, right?
Well, we've already achieved the sort of reflection of society that people call for. And I'll just make the point that as a Conservative, led by Kemi Badenoch, but of course, James Cleverly, Kwasi Kwarteng, in the last government, we had Sajid Javid,
Priti Patel, Suella Braverman.
Exactly. We run out of Rishi Sunak. The last government was stuffed with people from minority backgrounds who'd got to their position on merit. And I would like to suggest that's probably a better way of getting there and is more empowering for them, because otherwise some people will always suggest they got there because there's a special scheme in place that advantages them. Much better to let merit take its role.
Indeed. Alex, stay with us. We've got more stories still to come. Alex Dean with us on the programme, political commentator and consultant. Over to you as well on this one. What are you making of what you've heard so far about what the new Home Secretary, newish Home Secretary, is likely to talk about, and she'll put some more meat on the bones this afternoon. Is this going to be the time where we actually go, look, Labour solved the immigration problem? Who'd have thought it? They actually did it. I mean, look, Rishi gave it a go, and they had the Rwanda thing knocking around, never really happened, and Keir wanted to stop. No, all that out the window. Shabana Mahmood only went and did it. Do you believe that she can solve our immigration problem? 0344 499 1000.
What did you think when you watched that video of Rachel Millward saying, you know, that the people entering the country illegally are doctors, engineers and barbers and surgeons and all the rest of it?
I think it's quite shocking, and it just shows a lack of understanding of the small boat crisis and who these people are that are coming. I also feel that it undermines and disrespects the doctors that we do have working here from overseas. These people don't come over on the dinghies from France. They don't throw their medical registrations overboard.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Debbie says, so we have to sell family houses to pay for care, etc. But invaders, Debbie's word, get to keep their family heirlooms. I'd never thought about that aspect of the immigration story until today. That if in Denmark, if people have got, as the minister said, a bag of gold rings on them, they can be confiscated to help pay for the upkeep. Who comes? I mean, I thought if you're escaping a war zone, you know, do you really look for the old candelabra that's on the mantelpiece before you leave? We've got Alex Dean with us. Alex, of course, the consultant, political commentator. We're looking at the big stories of the day. Let's look at this one. The Conservatives suggesting that working families will be £1,000 worse off after the Chancellor's autumn budget. Once again, suggesting that Boomerang Rach will break her manifesto promise. Let's have a listen. It's always worth a reminder of what she said when it comes to her plans for the budget. Here it is.
At the budget, I will continue to deliver on the priorities of the British people. We will bear down on waiting lists, on the cost of living, and on the national debt. I will continue to build the strong foundations to secure Britain's future, for a fairer Britain, a more prosperous Britain, a Britain with an economy that works for everyone.
I mean, these are kind of platitudes. She's not alone in that one, Alex. Wouldn't it be better if she said, look, I've got a budget coming up in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a flipping crime scene. So buckle in and stand by, because it's not going to look good.
But she can't. One, because of the manifesto on which they ran, and one, government, which said that they wouldn't raise the major taxes that render significant amounts of money into the Treasury, so VAT, income tax and national insurance. And two, because she told us at the last budget it was a one and done. She'd never have to do that again. The really hard budget we had in her first year, which was horrible for this country, national insurance contribution from employers, a tax on jobs went up under a chancellor that claims to believe in growth. You know, that was awful. And she recognised that the last budget was negative and said, we'll never have to do it again. So she can't really forecast the next one and say it's going to be really hard again, because the last one was meant to be the hard one. And she also looks very much like she's U-turned on raising income tax. So if she's done that, she's going to have lots of little pots of £1 to £2 billion raises that she's going to have to try to do to realise the number that they need to get to. And to do that, a number of groups in society will feel the pinch, will really suffer as a result. And the question is whether you can actually still get there without touching the major taxes that they've ruled out doing.
And I suppose this applies to Conservatives and anyone who becomes the Chancellor, who has to deliver the news, even though it's kind of agreed upon by a wider body of people. I mean, there is a school of thought, and I'm not suggesting I know how to do this, Alex, but what actually needs to happen at this point in the 21st century is we need almost a complete overhaul, a recalibration of expectations, how we raise money, how far money can do. The NHS is a great example where I think we just need to get used to the idea the NHS cannot do everything and solve everything. But unless we say that out loud and honestly, we're always going to be in this position. If you knew the NHS did a basic model of care, then I think you could get away with the kind of budgets that are in there and make things work. But we need almost a reality check on how we do business.
I agree with that, but we also need a mental reset where we say that the NHS does some things well and some things badly, like any organisation of that size, instead of treating it like a religion. It is completely immoral to criticise any aspect of what happens within it, and immoral to suggest it's ever done anything wrong, despite the fact that quite plainly, like any organisation of that sort of size and scale, things will go wrong, and individuals will sometimes, within its auspices, be bad practitioners. After all, 1.2 million employees, they are not all saints. They can't be. 1.2 million people working at something will not always get everything right, but we're talked to as if we're supposed to believe that it will. And instead, what they do is go around squeezing out any sort of private sector activity, including on insurance for healthcare, which could take away some of the burden that's upon the health system. Just in the same way that if you choose to send your child to a private school, you are paying twice. You're already paying your tax for the state school, and then you're voluntarily paying again for that child to be educated outside the system. If you pay for your medical processes or treatment privately, you're paying twice. You're paying your tax for the NHS, and then you're voluntarily paying again. We should be encouraging that and making it that bit easier rather than making it harder.
Yeah, spot on. It's the entire part of or the end of the telescope, I suppose, that one looks through on these kind of things. But no Chancellor ever wants to. I mean, the idea of being radical, I would imagine Chancellors do come up with maybe some bold ideas, and you know, the Sir Humphreys and the head honchos in the civil service simply say, sorry, you can't do that unless you want to have a 10-year row.
Well, try it. I mean, look at the long game, right? The last time somebody raised the retirement age several years ago, it wasn't radical, it wasn't, mind-blowing. It was a reflection of the fact that our life expectancy is going up. Nevertheless, we're living from the consequences of that decision now. Some 15 years on, people are still complaining about it, trying to say to the state that they should get more money because they never knew that decision was being made. I know that you've got lots of viewers and listeners who are very sympathetic to the Women Against State Pension Inequality, but it seems to me that if you want to retire earlier than men, you're not a believer in state pension equality. You are a believer in state pension inequality. You want to be paid out earlier. My point is, whatever you think of the issue, we still haven't got past the fact that that decision was made umpteen years ago.
Sure.
So it's very difficult to be radical in modern society with modern government, I'm afraid.
And of course, we have all sorts of new requirements, particularly in the area of health and mental health, that are coming on board all the time. And this brings us to our next story here, Alex. This is absolute beauty of a story. A thing called eco-fear or eco-anger or eco-grief is getting people down the thought that the end is nigh, we are all doomed and we're going to sizzle away in a heat wave of something that you couldn't even put in one of those apocalyptic movies and get away with. It's going to be that bad. And a government report has revealed that fears over climate change could fuel drug use as well. It's worth having a reminder of the man in charge of all of this. Have a listen to a little selection of Ed Miliband promoting policies, and I promise you he was as clean as a whistle when he recorded all of these. Here he is.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
We're building the first fleet of SMRs in North Wales, creating 3,000 jobs.
It is cake, and not just any cake, it's solar-powered cake. Nothing ever changes.
Let me just remind everybody, for those unfamiliar, that man has a very senior position in government, could have been our Prime Minister, Alex. Frankly, should be in jail for that. But he seems to, I can see the look of almost angst and discombobulation on your face as you were forced to watch and listen to that, Alex Dean.
It's very unfair in politics to imply that someone isn't all there, especially when they're not here to respond on their own behalf. But I'm not sure that's the best image for Ed Miliband. And maybe that's just a reflection of the position he's wound up in political life, a bit like Sir Ed Davey, who just seems to want to do nothing but bungee jump from biplanes into buckets of jelly. But I mean, I don't think that's a sensible position for our Environment Secretary to have taken. And I will say about the point you were making, which is that young people are increasingly mentally troubled by the society they are in. That is a rational response by young people to a generation's worth of teaching telling them that the sky is falling in and that we are all doomed. That is not actually the fault of the child. It's the fault of a society and an education that...
And people like Ed.
Tells them without ambiguity that the end is nigh. Actually, going off and getting high is quite a rational response if you think the world's going to end tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd be absolutely off my face if I thought the world was going to end tomorrow and we'd all be out having the best night ever, frankly. But there is Ed Miliband records those videos from time to time, and it's because probably somebody in his department applied to an ad in The Guardian that said TikToker required to produce content for the Labour Party. Someone told Ed Miliband that he's kind of a bit comedic. Spoiler alert. He's not. And, he can be informative via the conduit of his comedy. Spoiler alert, he can't be. So it's a lose-lose, I'm afraid, but clearly Ed thinks he's doing the right job. On that point, Alex, great to have you with us again. We will speak very soon. He is Alex Dean, consultant, political commentator, former Conservative candidate as well. Thank you to him. Over to you on that and all the other big stories as well. In particular, that question, can Shabana Mahmood solve the immigration crisis? Are we about to wake up in a couple of weeks' time and go, wow, despite everything that Nigel Farage has said for years, and he's, been very forthright, arguably the only, whether you love or hate the guy, makes no odds to this, the only person that's been absolutely upfront and robust when it comes to immigration. The Conservatives are sort of trying to play a bit of catch-up. But could it really be, in a world that nobody expected, could it be that Labour, Shabana Mahmood, solve the immigration crisis? Are you seeing this? You heard her words. She's going to be speaking later. If it happens in our show, we will cross over to the House of Commons as it happens. Details on the way. Could she solve it? 0344 499 1000. It's 1:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. We have so much comment on this, and I'm going to bring them to you in a bit more detail in a few moments' time. We are, of course, talking about the Home Secretary set to announce new strict rules to crack down on illegal immigration. She'll announce UK visa bans for countries that refuse to take migrants back, alongside seizing valuables from illegal immigrants to help with the cost of accommodation. Let's have a listen to what the Home Secretary posted on her own X account about the asylum system. Here she is.
In the last 4 years, 400,000 people claimed asylum here. Over 100,000 are housed and supported at taxpayers' expense, putting huge pressure on local communities. We need to reduce the numbers coming here illegally. We need to remove more people who have no right to be here. We will always be a country that gives sanctuary to those fleeing danger, but we must restore order and control.
And of course, already the room is somewhat divided on this, and there is a sense that many Labour backbenchers will not be happy about some of this. And our previous guest, Alex Dean, even predicting there could be resignations today when she makes some of these announcements. Let's firstly get a word from Baroness McLean, Conservative peer, former Home Office Minister. Baroness McLean, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. You know what the Home Office looks like. I bet you couldn't wait to get out the place. I mean, it's never a dull day over there. That's and right. the files and the agendas, and just when you think you've got a gap in your diary, along comes a pesky civil servant and fills that 7 minutes. So there's never a moment. You recognise all of this, I know you do. But listen, look, I mean, Shabana Mahmood appears to be, on the face of it, more serious, let's put it this way, than perhaps her predecessor, and some would say taking or going further than some of her Conservative predecessors. What do you make of that?
So, look, I wish her all the best, because this is in the best interest of the country and putting partisan politics aside. But my worry, Ian, because you've talked about being inside the Home Office, and I was inside the Home Office, and I did serve as a minister there, and I had a fair bit of involvement with the immigration and asylum issue. What she's doing is she's talking tough to appeal to voters and people who are really concerned about this issue. But the things that she's saying will not deliver anything like the amount of change that needs to happen. And we've seen that. I mean, I could speak from experience. One thing about losing an election is that you do have time to reflect on where you went wrong. And this is exactly what we did. Our party did the same thing. We got it wrong. We talked tough, but we didn't deliver. And that is the problem that she's going to face, even if she can get it through her own backbenchers, which it doesn't look likely that she will.
Where's the biggest hurdle likely to come from on this one? Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has already said that, you know, all the while we're in the ECHR, these problems are not solvable because there will always be a legal argument against it, and while you're working it out, many years can pass before they are even get to a courtroom or any kind of conclusion. So he's suggesting it's tinkering around the edges.
Yeah, I mean, look, we haven't seen what she's going to announce, but it's all been trailed pretty heavily. So she's announcing stuff that's actually already the law. So the visa restrictions that she's talked about, well, we legislated for that when we were in government. And by the way, her and her party all voted against it. Those powers already exist. But Chris is completely right. Well, as long as we're in the ECHR and they can take account of that and the Human Rights Act, it's just not workable. And unless they fundamentally reform the Modern Slavery Act, which is now also being used as a fast track for illegal migrants rather than what it was meant to be, which is actually dealing with very vulnerable young people in our own country, she won't be able to do any of it. And of course, she will not be able to get that through her own party, and certainly not through the House of Lords either.
What is this almost Gordian knot of contemporary politics, try to sort this one out? And I know there's You know, there's so many tentacles to the story. I'm not betraying anything journalistically here, but I remember going to a function and sitting with the former permanent secretary at the Home Office, a man you will know very well. And after a few wines, he was sort of saying, you know, if only people knew how much time we spend on this, the idea that we sort of sit around doing nothing. He said it is constant 24/7 Teams meetings, goodness knows what else, intergovernmental discussions, various Home Office ministers from all around, you know, the whole thing. And I don't dispute, but still we end up with the headline that numbers are increasing.
Yeah. I mean, he's absolutely right. We did. But that's why things need to be very radical. All the things that sound easy, you know, people often say, well, why don't you just send the Navy into the channel? Well, you know, the Navy aren't going to follow a minister's orders, full stop. If you try to order them to do that, there's all sorts of problems with things that sort of sound simple. And obviously, all of us who've been ministers and been members of Parliament have already thought of all this, and you know, trying to get these sorts of things implemented. But there's so many obstacles. I mean, that's why we came up with the Rwanda plan. I mean, obviously, we were kicked out of government before we could implement it, but we came to the conclusion that it's not until you have a deterrent, which, by the way, was the model that Australia used, that migrants were told very clearly, if you come here, you're just going to be shipped straight away to somewhere else where you don't want to be. And that is the thing. As soon as that message gets out there onto the beaches of Calais and into the smuggling networks, it isn't going to be worth them spending $20,000 or whatever it is for a passage in a small boat. And that message will soon get around and they'll find somewhere else to go. I mean, that is the key problem, because they know that they can just subvert the system. And that's why we, through very painful experience, realised that was the only way to do it. And we couldn't get that to work because we were still in the ECHR at the time. We didn't have the political settlement or the impetus to do it. We do now. And that's absolutely what we should do as a party, and we're now united behind that. But clearly we need to sell that and get back into government before we can actually implement it.
Indeed. 2029, is that a likelihood? I mean, it's a separate question largely. It's a few years away.
It is. Well, I'm very optimistic. Of course I am. And I believe we are the only party with the solutions to these things and a whole host of other things too. But, you know, voters obviously kicked us out of government just a couple of years ago. So we have a lot of work to do to bring back trust with people. And, you know, I am very realistic about that and very, very humble about the whole experience. I'm old enough now to have been around that a few times and know that we can't just pop back up and say, vote for us again without a lot of apologies that we have to give.
I get it. Listen, Baroness Maclean, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Baroness Rachel Maclean, Conservative peer, former Home Office Minister. Many angles to this story, and Shabana Mahmood announcing this afternoon, round about 3:30ish, what Labour's new policies will be. There's a bit of Danish in there, looking to Denmark, who have widely been seen. I mean, it depends how you look. I mean, the Denmark scheme is seen as one of the most stringent in the world. But actually, if you dig a little deeper, not every element of Danish immigration policy has worked, and there are many people who are critics of some of what they've tried to do. Let's get a word from Amos Schonfield, founder and CEO of Our Second Home. This is a youth movement that empowers refugees and asylum seekers to flourish in the place they now call home. Amos, good afternoon to you. I mean, you heard what Baroness Maclean had to say there. I mean, with respect to her, largely irrelevant in some respects because she ain't in government, but Shabana Mahmood is, and this afternoon she's likely to make some fairly unprecedented policy announcements in this area of immigration. We've had a bit of a taster. You've heard what she has suggested she's going to announce. What is your take on what you've heard so far? And good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Look, we're going around the merry-go-round again. In 25 years, since 1999, we've had 10 different immigration laws. Each time, the Home Secretary of the time turns around and says, we're going to finally get tough on this and we're going to get results. And each time, that doesn't happen because there's a failure to understand the reality of what migration really is. People are running for their lives. They're desperate. People will take risks. And people have understood for many years now that Britain is a place that can give them safety, security, and dignity. And that is what the Home Secretary said, that we are a country of welcome. And that's why, you know, the top 5 countries who are coming at the moment, people who are Sudanese fleeing the genocide there, people who are Syrian, Eritrean, Iranian, Afghan, these are countries where you're much more likely than not to be given asylum in the UK, because when the Home Office does assess those people, they find that they're legitimately refugees. In which case, what are we doing here? We should be thinking about how we can make our system more controlled, more fair, but by cracking down again, this is simply just the same failed orthodoxy again.
Does it not need, though, a robust, I mean, notwithstanding, and Mahmood said it in her video, you know, we a country that has a proud record on looking after people. What seems to have happened, Amos, in the last few years is that there is a sense that the immigration narrative has kind of changed, that many of the people are not escaping despotic regimes or a tyrannical war or something awful like that. But actually, people are just a little more discerning around the world. And by the way, I don't blame anyone. If I lived in some of these countries, I'd probably want to come to the UK. So if you want to give it a go, that, you know, I get the instinct of the individual, but a sense that particularly those coming across the English Channel who've paid 3, 4, 5,000 quid, whatever it is, you know, these are young guys that want a change of life. They're not desperate refugees. Nothing in the story looks like that. It doesn't sound like that. If you go to the hotels and interview these people, there doesn't appear to be a kind of destitute sort of vulnerability that we would expect from people escaping war.
I mean, what you're describing is the vibe, and let's get the statistics to match or to challenge that vibe, which is that, you know, Sudanese people who are fleeing the genocide right now, 98% of them get given asylum. Syrians, 98% of them get given asylum. Eritreans, 87% get given asylum. Those top 5 countries I spoke about make up 3/5 of the people on the boats who are coming here, risking their lives in order to call the UK their home. They're coming because they have understood the UK is a place where they can get safety, dignity, and security. And that's not simply, am I not going to get bombed where I am? That's also, how can I make sure that I have a way to live fruitfully and you know, and harmoniously with the people around me? And when we talk about the order and control that Mahmood referenced, you know, we do need that. We do need a system that works, and what we've learned, you know, the way that the previous government really sort of attacked and ransacked the system, we do need a functioning system that can process people's asylum claims quickly, work out when people are refugees, how we can give them the support they need to call this place their home, and for those who aren't, we have to work out how to get them somewhere where they can continue their lives in other ways. We need the resettlement. We need good people who are working in those cases. What we don't need is more, you know, just tough talk for the sake of it. It's tough talk in order to get votes, and I think voters can see through that. What they really want is Labour to be true to the values of this country, values of welcome, values that welcome the people from my community. I'm Jewish, and so many of the people in my community came to the country through the kinder transport and as refugees from the Holocaust. That's when we saw the best of this country. We saw it again after the Syrian crisis. We saw it again after the Ukraine crisis. That's what we really are about. What we're trying to do here is just win some votes in a dishonest way, and it's not going to trick anyone.
But is that, I mean, some might say, yeah, look, clearly there are people who are legging it from awful places. Not everybody in an awful place will necessarily be a potential vulnerability because their country is, you know, not in its in the best of nick right now. But there's an awkward and an uncomfortable reality, isn't there, that how many people can any one country take in terms of numbers? I mean, Mahmood gave out the numbers there, 400,000 people in the last 4 years. I mean, that's not sustainable, is it? Even if you have the biggest hearts in the world, Amos, that's not sustainable. And numbers are going down in Europe, but going up in this country.
When you compare how many people we're taking and supporting here in the UK to other countries in Europe, when you do it by capita, you know, comparing it to our population, I think we're 17th in Europe. We're not the most generous. We're relying on the generosity of other countries in order to be freeloaders in the asylum system. If we were taking that question seriously, Ian, we would be doing so much more to help, because other countries are also struggling because, you know, there isn't an immigration and asylum, you know, reality at the moment, which is that so many countries are experiencing upheaval and crisis. In which case, you know, the countries like ours that are relatively better off do need to step up. And
do you think we should be taking more people?
I don't know about the number. The number that we should be taking is the number of people that need our support. And of course there are limits, but, you know, 400,000 people a year, if you over the past 4 years, that's the capacity of Wembley Stadium needing to be supported across a country of 68 million people. We can do that. People in our communities can do that.
We?
And what we've learned,
can we? I mean, because you didn't mention
so far.
You mentioned, you know, per capita and all the rest of it, but that density population throws out a very different statistic. You said we were 17th. If you look at density population, then that puts us in a different part of that league table.
So what we found is that the way that we run our asylum system at the moment doesn't work particularly well. We've known that when it was the Conservative government doing it, and we've known that when it's now the Labour government doing it. We can't be spending £5.8 million a day, giving that money to private companies, that taxpayers' money to private companies to run, hotels, which are generously called hotels. They are cramming people into multiple people into rooms at a time, moving people into barracks that have had, disease and infestation. We know how to do this in a better way. Prior to the austerity of the Conservative government, we were housing people in initial accommodation centres for a couple of weeks and then moving them into communities in less concentrated ways. And communities were able to support those numbers. Right now, the way we concentrate people into high-rise hotels doesn't work. We know that. But there are other ways, and they don't rely on being Danish.
But we're not going to solve the problem, are we? If one of the ways to look at it, and I've always said, I totally get the whole thing about being a country that wants to, has a moral responsibility like everybody. If somebody is legging it from a horrendous place, as you rightly say, your own backstory and others with similar stories, we have got a good track record on that. But there is also a very brutal, how many is too many. The reality of the economics of the argument to many people don't stack up. Yeah, you can have a great heart, but the economics, 5-6 million quid a day on hotels. But if you transpose that to people living in HMOs or other accommodation, it's still going to be millions of pounds a day.
So, there are ways that we can make the system work better for us. One example is a study from last year that showed if we give asylum seekers the right to work, we would ease the taxpayer burden on asylum seekers by £6.7 billion, and we would be raising £1.5 billion in taxation. That is, that's already a huge chunk of what we're talking about in terms of the cost of the asylum system. So the economics are, the reality that we create for ourselves, which is that since 2002, asylum seekers who are, as talk about people who are able-bodied and willing to contribute to this society, are banned from working. That's why they're sitting around all day waiting for something to do, because the government doesn't let them work.
But what kind of jobs would people be working in? We are largely talking about low-skilled workers here.
We can be talking about, there's great needs in industries that require
Amazon
warehouses
technical or food delivery.
Exactly, you're answering it yourself.
That's not a great job, is it?
social
That's a low-skilled job where you're likely to find yourself on some kind of additional benefit to top up your wages, particularly if you have a family.
Well, now we're talking about whether Amazon should be paying their workers more, but we can be looking at hospitality, which is constantly looking for people who can work. We're looking at social care, which is facing a crisis of employment. There's so many places that we could be thinking more creatively instead of going down the same route again and again. The Baroness before talked about how she'd seen all of this before, and that's because none of these ideas are brand new. They're, reheated things that have been rejected by previous Home Office. We need to be trying to do something new and different.
Amos, on that point, thank you for coming on with us. Really appreciate your time. Amos Schonfield, founder and CEO of Our Second Home. His thing, if you like, the angle that he comes at this from is that this is all about our beating heart of morality that should kick in. And there are certain countries where you're almost guaranteed to get asylum status because they are demonstrably war zones and places that, if you leave it, you're leaving it for those very reasons. I can't quite get my head around whether the average Eritrean is going to be working in hospitality anytime soon. And I say that because unless English is your, a language you have a good command on, which is possible, of course, I just don't think we are going to be filling loads of jobs and should use it as an argument to encourage more people to come here because we're short of bodies to work in pubs and restaurants. I don't see those two things marrying up somehow. 0344 499 1000. You heard what both of our guests said. Over to you. Can Shabana Mahmood solve the asylum crisis? This is Talk.
What did you think when you watched that video of Rachel Millward saying, you know, that the people entering the country illegally are doctors, engineers and barbers and surgeons and all the rest of it?
I think it's quite shocking, and it just shows a lack of understanding of the small boat crisis and who these people are that are coming. I also feel that it undermines and disrespects the doctors that we do have working here from overseas. These people don't come over on the dinghies from France. They don't throw their medical registrations overboard.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is from Jack, somewhere in Northern Ireland, who says, not a chance will Mahmood manage to curb illegal immigration. She can claim anything she likes, but it'll be voted down by her own party. As far as I'm concerned, her words mean nothing more than stop the boats did. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Thank you, Jack, for that. This from Rob in just south of Scunny, says, I'm not very happy. I don't want unknown illegal migrants in my country, but I hate the idea of removing jewellery from them. Think back to 85 Tears, at what the Nazis did to Jews. It doesn't sit easy with me. There's a kind of... There is a sort of symbolism, isn't there? Forget the detail. Oh, look, he's wearing a Rolex, so therefore, you know, it's only right if you've got 38 grand's worth of Rolex on your wrist that you contribute something. But you're right, the optics have historic, unsavoury significance. This is what Denmark do, and apparently to great effect. Herbie is down Harrow Way. How you doing, Herbie?
Okay, Ian, not so bad. As somebody said earlier on, it's got to get past their backbenchers.
Yeah.
And why do we use somebody else's method? What's the matter with our own methods?
Apparently we haven't got any. We run out of methods.
Ideas?
Say again?
Haven't we got any ideas of our own? Do we have to go to other countries? You know, we should be dealing with this a long time ago.
Well, we had Rwanda, didn't we? And Rwanda never happened because the Tories got kicked out and Starmer cancelled it almost in hour one of walking into Downing Street.
Yep, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, Ian, I can't see this happening because I can't see the backbenchers accepting it. I can't see the Labour Party accepting it. This is all, you know, smoke and mirrors yet again. It's just to keep it quiet for the moment because the reform, I think, going up the ladder.
Well, the Baroness that we spoke to said, like, you know, everyone's got grand ideas, send the Navy in and stuff like that, but actually that stuff tends not to work because, firstly, the Navy would refuse to do it. So it's harder than people think is kind of her... I mean, I still find that a lousy answer because the idea that we can't stop 400,000 people floating over the English Channel to this country is extraordinary.
That's only for now, Ian. You know, 400,000, and it's ever increasing. Every week we got 1,000 plus coming over.
Correct.
When is it going to stop? You know, something's going to happen. Either we're going to run out completely out of money, we're going to run out of, places where they can stay or whatever. You know, it's all coming to a head. Well, that's a good point.
Now. It's coming to a head. And, you know, the reason why some of these people are in 4-star hotels is because they ran out of the 2-star hotels and the 3-star hotels. You know, they literally haven't got anywhere to put people in. Herbie, always good to have you on. Thank you for that. I want to get a word from John in South Wales on this very point. Can Mahmood solve the crisis? John, what do you think? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Absolutely not. They got most of these politicians got history of lying, blatantly lying, just to get their own means.
Do you not think she's known to be a bit more to the right of her party?
No.
Could she not believe it herself, even if she can't implement it because of her own backbenchers?
No, could there be too many other people saying you can't do that?
Yeah.
And that's the bare bones of it. It's whether you like it or not. These people they're not fit to govern because they just lie in. They're only in it for their own gain. That's all they're in it for. Everyone I know always had aspirations when they were growing up.
Yep.
They said, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a dentist. And then all of a sudden, these people, I want to be a politician. But they don't know nothing about politics.
Yeah, and they often don't know anything about life, you know. I mean, there are arguments about you should be a certain age before you become an MP.
And like I said to the lady who I phoned up, I said, years ago, I'm 60 years of age, right? He was on about mental health. I got severe mental health. I can't afford to be off on the sick. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. Right? People say there is no jobs. I left one job because I got made redundant on a Wednesday. Had a job interview on a Thursday. He said, when can you start? I said, tomorrow, because I have to. I have no choice.
Yeah.
The thing is, years ago, these politicians started saying you have to do it for nothing. Years ago, when I was a kid, if you was a magistrate, you didn't get paid. You didn't get paid.
Yeah.
You done it because you're a well-to-do person. Well, shoes on the other foot now. Instead of trying to get everything for nothing, because that's all these politicians are doing.
Maybe you need to be a magistrate, John, as well.
Well, no, it's not a question of that. It's these people, all they want to do is get paid vast sums of money for doing nothing for it.
And do nothing for it. Yeah, well, we've lost kind of... I mean, I know there's a bit of rose-tinted glasses in all of this, but we seem to have lost brilliance in politics. You know, the politicians and the MPs that you can look at and go... Even if you don't vote for them as a party, you look at and go, wow, they're good. Thank you, John, in South Wales, for that. Is Shabana Mahmood one of those politics? Can she solve the immigration crisis? 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news at 2.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It really is a crock of old nonsense, isn't it, what's going on out there these days? I mean, there is a big fat list of stuff that needs to get discussed. Top of that list this afternoon is going to be that big announcement from Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who's going to talk about new strict rules in immigration, a crackdown on illegals. She'll announce UK visa bans for countries that refuse to take back migrants. Also, this issue of seizing valuables from small boat arrivals to help the cost of accommodation. It's the conundrum nobody can sort. No one seems to be able to get to grips with this one, whichever way you sit on the argument. Can she do it, though? Do you think she's going to be the one where Yvette Cooper and Braverman and Patel and Javid and others all failed? They all gave it a go. Nobody made it work. Is Labour's Home Secretary likely to be the one that actually sorts this thing out? 0344 499 1000. It's a reasonable question. Also this afternoon, at least 500 civil servants now working government diversity roles, with numbers doubling in some departments since Labour took office. How does this happen? This took a 2-year freedom of information fight by a Tory MP to get this detail, and to make it worse, by the way, it's likely to underestimate as some departments refuse to answer the question, which is a disgrace. And also this, the UK Health and Security Agency has warned eco-fear, eco-anger and eco-grief are harming mental health, linking climate change and climate stress to depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance misuse and violence. Some people are so scared that the end is nigh and they're going to fry to death with the inevitable heat wave that will envelop us. They're turning to the old Peruvian marching powder or getting out in the town centre and kicking off. One of the two, maybe both. 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. This is Talk. On that very note, Cliff in Berkshire says, of course kids are anxious about eco-issues. They've been indoctrinated by our so-called education system and constantly told that the world is burning by the media. They never hear the other side of the argument since Blair decreed the science is settled. Yeah, was it Blair or was it the BBC that declared it was settled? On borders, Keith in Shrewsbury says, you really have to laugh, Ian. Border Force don't take fingerprints, biometric data, photographs of illegals coming into the country, so I doubt they have the power to search them and take their gold. Just more hot air from a desperate government. No one is buying it. What, the gold or the policy? Maybe either. Thank you, Keith, for that. And Beverly says, just heard you talking about being worried about climate change. Bet you a tenner that that's going to be the next reason for getting disability allowance. Yeah, that's Beverly in rainy Spain. It's unusual that Spain takes a bit of a turn in this way because they stay warm almost all year round. But yeah, it's been chucking it down out there. Thank you, Bev, for that. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us, particularly on that question of whether you think Mahmood is the person that's going to solve the problem. Also, this question of DEI, this is another one that drives me so nuts. I want to nail my eyelids to the floorboards. At least 500 civil servants now work in policing and developing DEI, that is diversity, equality and inclusion, across government departments. Numbers have doubled in some areas since Labour took office, and that tally was pulled from a freedom of information fight that the Tory MP Neil O'Brien had to have in order to get the figure. It's likely to be an underestimate because some departments actually refuse to answer the question. I don't know whether that's illegal to refuse to answer it, but it's diabolical to not answer it. Let's speak with Dan Barker, board member for Reform UK. Dan, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. There's nothing really surprises me about this, to be honest. I mean, it's, you know, we already had too many of these people working in this curious area that nobody can really quite define. And now we have more of them since Labour came to office. What a surprise.
It is no surprise at all. I mean, it is a non-job. It's a big con. I mean, it's the opposite of a meritocracy. And I can say from my own experience, Ian, of doing a similar exercise around Greater Manchester, that they do, you know, public sector bodies, councils, NHS, Greater Manchester authorities, they do try and block you. And there's ways and means. And they also retitle the jobs so they don't have the D, E and I anywhere in the title, but they're doing those roles. And the big concern for me is not so much the waste in the actual roles themselves. I mean, what do they do all day? How do you make a full-time job out of it? Yeah. But it's all the consequential work that comes from all the departments having to do reports, comply, and all the rest of it. And none of it is required. And that's the real the real waste, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because there is a knock-on effect, isn't there? You can employ somebody in that role, and within that role, they'll be firing off, one assumes sort of emails and questionnaires and building some curious database that they can show their boss to justify their impressive salary. So it has tentacles outside just their own brief, and it's been the butt of many jokes for years as to why we need this. If you are racist or discriminatory in the workplace, that's already illegal, and we already support the fact that it's illegal. And if it turns out that, you're employing your mate just because he's your mate and has no qualifications for the job, he's either going to get rumbled or you're going to get rumbled. So, we're grown-ups here. We don't really need a hand-holding diversity officer to say, you haven't got enough lesbians working in the accounts department. I mean, it just sounds ridiculous.
It is. I mean, the fact that someone would get a job or get preference on a job because of the colour of the skin, the religion, the gender, or the sexual orientation, rather than what they can do, what their experience is, what their character is, what they're going to bring to that job. I mean, it's bonkers. And what we're seeing now, all the problems we've got in the public sector, in councils, in government, in the civil service, I think this is a big factor. I mean, the fact that the article with the Tory MP, where he's found 500, I think that number is underestimated.
Yeah.
And if you could get rid of those with the stroke of a pen, and I guarantee you that when Reform get into office, if there are any left, and I suspect there will be, they'll be gone in the first 100 days.
Well, on that point, Reform are claiming today that they have already made savings of £331 million. This is by ending wasteful areas in government or local government life. So what's this about then? Dan, shine some light on this if you could.
Well, I mean, as the press conference earlier, as Richard said, we're 10 minutes into a 90-minute game, 6 months into a 4-year term on these councils where we're in control, and we're already making big savings. And that's the way we're going to carry on. We're going to do that in the councils. If we make good headway in the Senate and Holyrood elections next year, you'll see that happening in the devolved nations. And if we get into power, when we get into power in Westminster, we'll bring the same approach. And we're proving that it can be done. There's lots of waste. There's lots of inefficiencies. We're showing it already at the councils, and we've only just started. So I would expect to see over the next months and years, you'll see bigger figures, bigger announcements on this topic.
Yeah, one of the areas, certainly I think Kent and County Durham, where they've claimed to have saved tens of millions by undeclaring the climate emergency, because of course, politicians were falling over themselves to declare a climate emergency, and when they didn't declare a climate emergency, it all sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? They were told, you haven't declared a climate emergency, your weaselly words, you've got to declare it. So they were, all right, we declare a climate emergency, and everybody sort of did a pat on the back to each other, how brilliant their declaration of the emergency was. And many of these councils, and that couple I mentioned, Kent, which is one of the biggest in the country, if not the biggest, and County Durham, have undeclared it, which is where some of those savings have been made.
Well, I mean, we laugh about it, and it is ridiculous declaring a climate emergency, but a lot of the councils do it, the Lib Dems, the Labours, and a lot of Tory councils. But it means then by doing that, they can then prioritise spending on projects that they wouldn't be able to fund otherwise, because they can say, well, this is our agreed priority. And this is just another way of piling money into net zero agenda, cycle lanes, vanity projects. And it's a licence for them to do what they want under the guise, the umbrella of this climate emergency. What does that mean? How are they ever going to affect it from a local council area?
Yep.
And my own council, Trafford Council, has done the same, and they are wasting money on their own agenda around this topic as well. So I think the sooner that we get rid of this, and I'm glad to see Durham have done it first, we could do it across the piece. There's immediate savings straight away, as well as all the waste on the net zero agenda. I mean, a lot of these councils, again, Labour councils, going for 2030, 2035 net zero goals when the national one is 2050.
Yeah.
What are they thinking?
Preening their environmental whiskers, I sensed, Dan. I was looking up my own local council this morning. Round the corner from me, they've, in the last 6 months or so, unveiled a new cycle lane. Now, I know everybody likes to have a pop at a cycle lane, but this is Premier League nonsense. I wouldn't even be able to do it justice, Dan, to describe to you the absolute turmoil and stupidity of what they've done here. It defies logic, belief, on any level. Even if you're a supporter of cycle lanes, you would look at this one and go, what kind of clown thought that was a good idea? It cost £1.3 million. And I looked this data up just this morning. Apparently there's another one coming around the corner as well, which I can scarcely believe. Now, that's a crime scene, frankly. £1.3 million for a council that can't fill in potholes and has all sorts of other issues that it's got to deal with. But they can monkey around on a very iffy-looking cycle lane that appears to be, I wouldn't just say underused, almost not used at all.
Well, we have them all over Greater Manchester, and again, they've been in place for quite some time. They put cones down the routes during COVID to get everyone into the habit of using, losing a lane and using a cycle lane. The use is quite low even now, several years on. And in some places, they've even put them through small town centres, cycle lanes on both sides of the roads. So whereas previously you could stop outside of shops, go in, pop in, buy something, come out, and you can't do that anymore. There's no parking. It's killing the town centres.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's all based on ideology, climate emergency, climate change, net zero, active travel. And I think, they have wasted so much money on this. And like you say, you can't drive down the road now without your car going through a big pothole. But there's cycle lanes galore.
100%. Dan, thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you very much, Ian.
Dan Barker, board member of Reform UK. I mean, to me, the cycle lane thing is, I'm on it now on this thing, because I genuinely, I reckon in my neck of the woods, even cyclists would go, well, that's it's ridiculous. Quite aside from the fact that it sort of starts and then kind of stops. It seems to stem for, I mean, not even a quarter of a mile, I don't think. I don't even think a quarter of a mile. And the carnage, it took months to put this thing in place. And I'll never do justice to how they've kind of attempted to do it, because it had to take a lay-by away, which is where residents park their cars. So they've tried to make an allowance for that, where you park your car on a little island. So each car goes sort of on its own little island. And then there's a cycle lane on the other side, which sort of mysteriously just begins at some busy traffic lights and then kind of ends outside a school. It is ridiculous. I can honestly say I have never seen anyone in it. I know that's every cyclist will go, well, everybody says that, but you're not there at 7:30 in the morning. At 7:30 in the morning, it's not the kind of road that you would utilise a cycle lane. It just doesn't lend itself to cycling for a number of reasons, frankly. And in any other world, if you saw somebody cycling on that road, you'd advise them to not cycle on it, because it's a flipping road and a major A road as well. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to that immigration story. Tarquin is over here, down in London. Tarquin, what have you got for us? Hi.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you, sir?
I'm all right. Yeah, fire away.
Jolly good. Well, I'm sure I haven't heard all of the show, but what I'm thinking is this is basically a carrot for the fact that the Labour Party do now realise, well, they've known for some time, but this is a desperate last-ditch attempt on their Trotskyite Titanic deck chair syndrome to avoid their inevitable, and despite what happens with this, it is still going to be inevitable because the British people are not stupid, the wipeout that they will face in next April's local elections. It's as simple as that. They're going to get wiped out. This is a last-ditch attempt to pretend to
But Tarquin, do you think that their argument might be that, because, at some point Reform could become the government, and if they do, then they have to solve it. Now, they can't turn boats around and use the Navy, apparently, because government departments, we are told, have considered this, and it sounds like it should work, but it won't. So they're going to be left with the same dilemma. What do they do?
Well, I think you'll find that then they will finally, and that, as they should have been done already by any right-minded British government, is to say we have sovereignty of this land. We have sovereignty under our constitution, and we can just say no. We can withdraw from that stupid treaty, which is like, as somebody said earlier, one of your great colleagues said earlier, this has been twisted out of all proportion of what it was meant to, intended to be back in 1950, whatever it, 40, 50. It's nothing. It's been completely abused by the human rights lawyers. It was never never intended for anything like this. As you quite rightly said, none of these boys coming over are shabby and dishevelled and beaten up and bruised and wounded and maimed. Not one of them. So it's all a complete fake. So we have to ask, what is going on here? Well, we all know, but nobody wants to say it. But we all know, and we know that come April, nobody in their right mind is going to go into that ballot box and go, oh, Labour's changed their mind. They've been so lovely. Let's vote for them. Ain't going to happen, mate.
Yeah.
Ain't going to happen.
I'd like to see somebody outside my polling station saying exactly that in that voice. And I'm sure there's going to be one of them with a clipboard, isn't there? Listen, Tarquin, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Ian in Wales says, Rachel Reeves blames the state of the economy on everything for the last 20 years. Somebody should show her the interview after the last budget where she says everything is now on them. She did. She did say that, and she used lots and lots of like really weird, wacky platitudes about clearing the decks. What was it? Clearing the decks and pushing envelopes and goodness knows what else, and trying to remember what her spads had told her to say. And it all sounds a bit rubbish. I genuinely think we have to recalibrate how a country is run. And I don't mean that from the point of view of any political party, because many will come into the same problem. It's what happens. You know, we often cheekily refer to Labour and the Tories as the uni party because they pretty much do the same thing. And in many areas they do. And the reason for that is because once they're in, of course, the might of the civil service, and there are, you know, I know we like to have a pop at the civil service, but some really good, you ask any minister, when you get a good civil servant, Nadine Dorries is always the great go-to person who had a group of civil servants around her that she thought were absolutely invaluable to trying to do a job. So there are good ones out there, but you get into that place where somebody says, look, this is just too convoluted. You're a government, you're here for possibly only 4 years, and it could be sooner than that if circumstances dictate. You're asking for such seismic policy changes that it would be expensive. It would be like turning an oil tanker around. You might be right, by the way, about your aim. You might say, yeah, I want to change this. But to do it would be huge. And then there's the knock-on effect with all the other departments. So the Treasury would be involved. If you are looking at education, that might also have an implication for social care for kids. So you've got all sorts of just incredibly labyrinthine, complex areas where a simple idea, you've come into government, you've got the big job, you became an MP, you've then got the call from the Prime Minister to say, you're now the Home Secretary. You go, that's fantastic, great, I'm going to be mooching around in one of those nice armour-plated cars. And you go in and you get the job and you say, well, here's a really good idea. What I'm going to do firstly is if you drop litter, you filthy little git, we're going to fine you £1,000, not threaten you with it. We're literally going to fine you £1,000. If you talk on your phone while on a train, we'll do two things. One, we'll crush your mobile in front of you, and then we'll crush your toes afterwards. You know what I mean? You come up with some ideas, and then you go to the cinema and go, right, I've got this great idea. And they go, yeah, you can't do that, mate. Why? Well, I mean, you can give it a go, but it's going to cost $7 million. You haven't got that. And it will take you 7 years to change all the legislation. So they just end up going for the path of least resistance. They go, all right, OK, well, say some things that sound a bit stricter, but we won't actually do very much. 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. Can Shabana Mahmood, let's give her the benefit of the doubt, she's going to speak in about an hour, can she solve the asylum crisis? And your thoughts on all the other areas we've discussed as well so far. This is Talk. Big news.
This has been going on since Tony Blair opened the floodgates to mass immigration in this century. And as long as we keep calling them asylum seekers, when in fact they're criminally sponsored illegal migrants, we will never solve this problem. If they are asylum seekers, they can claim asylum anywhere in the countries of Europe that they've travelled through in order to get to those tent camps on the border of France. We could actually stop the boats, but we will not do so because the human rights laws forbid it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Andy says, there's a saying, you shouldn't have to set fire yourself on... You shouldn't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Yes, this government is setting the British people on fire to keep immigrants and asylum seekers warm. It needs to stop these so-called new Labour policies, which have been long-term reform policy and recently adopted by the Tories, need to happen as a first step to start solving the problem, says Andy in Darlington. Yeah, and again, I just come back to the... look, I know we can all simplify it. We can't stop, what did she say, 400,000 people in 4 years getting in a boat and coming to... We have no way of stopping them. I'm just not having that. I'm not having it. I'm not having that. You can't stop that. We do loads of stuff. You know, got great technology out there. AI is doing all sorts of, like, previously unthinkable things. But we can't stop a boat. Paul is in Newport on civil service waste. Paul, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Good to speak to you, my friend.
You too.
Just on the like you've been talking about, you know, DEI and all how the numbers are growing. This and that.
Yes.
I don't want anyone to believe for a minute, okay, that if you shut the DEI down now, the financial pain disappears, because it doesn't. Okay, these contracts are set up. If you last week or the week before, the government said we're going to lay off 18,000 people from NHS England.
Yeah.
And they're predominantly office workers and administration staff. Yeah?
Sure.
And they put aside £1 billion to do that. Well, under the government's own statistics, okay, if every one of those 18,000 were to max out on their redundancy pay, which they won't, because there'll be some who've only been there 2 years, some have been there 20 years, but the most you can get under the government's redundancy package is £21,750. No more. Doesn't matter what you earn or how long you've been there. The most you'll get from the government is £21,750.
Yeah, because there's a big queue right now to be made redundant, right? There always is.
100%. But with the government, so if you look at that £1 billion, if we said the 18,000 times, if they were all on 27,000, if they were all going to get the maximum payout, that's about 360 million.
Yep.
But there's about 640 million pounds that's going somewhere, and they've allotted that they really didn't need to. And do you know where it goes?
Go on.
Their pensions.
Yeah.
They pay their pensions up. I know this because I know people who will be affected or likely to be affected by this. There are someone I know, at 47, they will retire.
47?
At 47, they already know, the people involved already know the package they're going to get. At 47, they will retire.
How do you get to retire at 47? What is the criteria? I mean, that would have to be a very specific kind of job, wouldn't it? Even by the generosity of the civil service.
They've got the years in, and they've pledged to make an unspecified, well, it's individual, but they're saying we will carry on paying your pension contributions, even though the job doesn't exist and you haven't got one.
Wow. That's all right, isn't it?
Well, I mean...
I mean, if you've got that job...
people who are going to get it, you sort of think, this is the NHS, right?
we're skint. We keep throwing more and more and more money at the NHS. And then we say,
nobody really seriously, they knew in 1948 when they started these public sector pensions, Paul, they knew about a year later that, this ain't going to work in 50 years' time because there'll be too many people and we can't possibly pay everyone to retire at 50 on an index-linked pension. But every government just kicked it into the long grass and said, we'll deal with it.
It's like I mean, one of the biggest sort of draws on the government's funds is actually civil service pensions.
Yeah.
It's a massive. I mean, the likes of you and I, we're looking there going, when they said the other day, oh no, we can't afford the state pension of £1,000 a month. Yeah. There's the likes of you and I going, but I'll need that.
Yeah.
Because £1,000 a month, if you're renting, your renting could easily be, in today's money, there's £650 if you live in the sticks like I do.
100%. It could easily be 2,500 if you live in the wrong place. Listen, Paul, I have to move just to get more comment on. You've been great as ever. Thank you, Paul in Newport. Nigel is down in London. What is happening, Nigel? Afternoon to you.
It was very nice to meet you recently. Good afternoon.
Yeah, it was indeed. Good to see you.
It was. And you, sir. I want to talk about immigration and say that whether it's the Labour government or the previous Tory government, they've got no ambition and they have no reason at all to stop it. It's not politically great for their party, for their voters.
Yeah.
What we need to... There's a reasonable way to stop illegal immigration I'm talking about. We all welcome people who come here legally, of course we do. But if you come to this country and you don't go through a passport control centre and you arrive on a boat on the back of a truck, you come here illegally.
Yeah.
And the way to stop it is very simple. Stop the benefits. Give people nothing. And if you give people nothing, why would they come in when you're putting them up in a hotel, giving them 3 meals a day, a mobile phone, clothing and spending money? If you're going to get nothing when you come here, what ambition and desire would you want to come here?
You would not bother, right? You only bother because you're going to get something. And, even if it's not the most generous, you're still going to get something. You're still going to get roof over your head and a meal, and you can remain like that for years.
Yeah, and my wife has the misfortune of dealing with some of these people. It's impossible to check their antecedents, their history, who they are, where they come from, who they are. How do we know they've come from war-torn countries if they've got no antecedents and paperwork?
That's true.
And the other thing is, do what they did in the Second World War. Put blockades up off the coast to stop boats coming in. Why can't we do that?
What about the genuine boats?
Well, the genuine boats would go through a port, wouldn't they? And arrive with paperwork.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, yeah. Where would you put the blocker? Would you put them a mile out, or would you find another way? I don't know the logistics of it, but certainly the spirit of what you say. Again, you'd think by now somebody has come up with a sort of a maritime fix that they could somehow make this happen.
But there's no appetite. All it is we're going to do this, but we're never going to do it, and we blame the previous party for not doing it as well. There's no ambition in it. It doesn't matter which party is in power. They do not want to solve this problem because they're feared they're going to lose votes from people who may sympathise with illegal immigration.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're bang on. Nigel, thank you very much indeed for that. Finn, our producer, thinks you could put a line of wind turbines in the channel. Maybe you could do that. Maybe there's just a better way, because people do the booze cruise, don't they, across the channel? There's got to be a better way. I mean, such a short bit of water. I'm staggered they've never tried catapulting people from one side to the other. I'd give that a go, wouldn't you? Well, you can have by ferry, Eurostar or catapult, mate. Which one is it? I'll go for the latter, frankly, especially after a few beers over there in Boulogne or whatever. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Debate around climate, environment and green issues has taken a bit of a turn. The UK Health and Security Agency has warned eco-fear, eco-anger and eco-grief are things, and they are harming mental health, linking climate stress to depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse and even violence. What is going on? Rupert Darwell is the author of Green Tyranny. Rupert, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. So I'm assuming, in kind of layman's terms, people are so freaked out with the idea that they're going to fry to death over the next couple of years that they're turning to the Class A's or getting angry or having anxiety, that kind of thing. Is that broadly what's going on here?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, Ian, that it's been a deliberate campaign by the government, by the climate industrial complex, by the UN holding the COP30 conference in Brazil at the moment to hype up climate catastrophism. They are telling people, unless you decarbonize, unless you put up wind farms, unless you stop eating meat, there will be a climate catastrophe and terrible things will happen. So this is actually the outcome of a deliberate campaign run by the government and by the climate industrial complex.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm sort of slightly smiling here because in the absence of sort of anything that makes sense in this world right now, particularly on some of these kind of issues, I can't think of any other reaction, frankly. It's almost as if you could have written it this way years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, it's very much like during the pandemic where young people were told that if you don't mask or if you don't if you're not socially isolated, you're going to kill your gran. Remember all that stuff?
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing. It was a deliberate effort to create fake anxiety, to create out of something that is false, the idea that we are facing climate breakdown. I'll give you one idea about the timescales of climate change. You know, they always talk about tipping points and stuff like that, and one of the earliest tipping points is the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, which the IPCC talks about might happen over multiple millennia. Now, no one in their right mind is going to be worried about something that might happen in 3,000 or 4,000 years' time.
Well, indeed. I mean, I appreciate, you sometimes have to have a little look forward, but, 1,000 years? I mean, really? Is how far do you go?
Well, it's not your kids and your grandkids, is it? That kind of stuff.
Or even their grandkids.
Yeah. Exactly. It's just, but climate catastrophism is absolutely part of what is used to say we've got to do these terrible things to our economy and we've got to suffer and we've got to pay the highest electricity bills in the world. Yeah. So it really goes with the territory.
Yes, everything in that respect has worked out exactly as Ed Miliband wanted it to, I suppose. I mean, it's, we were playing some of his greatest bits a little earlier of how he tries to sell his policies, and he tries to make it all kind of amusing and thinks he's got some kind of comedic presence in this place. I don't think he has. They're quite cringy to watch, as I'm sure you've seen. But this is the story he wanted, right? He wanted this. A poll last year found that half of teenagers fear an apocalypse due to climate issues, and they only fear that because someone told them that. Ed Miliband.
Yeah. It's absolutely outrageous that they are scaring children about something that is not going to happen. I mean, when I was young, we had the Cold War, the threat of nuclear exchange, nuclear missile and nuclear war and so forth. Yeah. I mean, that was actually real, but I didn't go around to what. We didn't have teachers telling us we've got to sit under our desks in case there was a nuclear bomb. It's an appalling way to treat children.
Yeah, 100%. Let's just get a word on this story while you're with us, Rupert. This is we often talk about fly tipping and waste, and over there in Oxfordshire, right near the River Cherwell, and drone footage has revealed this this must be the biggest somewhere on the planet, I would imagine. 60 metres long, 15 metres wide, 10 metres high, a mound of waste that the local authority haven't been able to keep track of or somehow do anything about, because it's still there, it stinks, criminal gangs are behind it, there's a floodplain which means it poses an additional risk. This is the 21st century in the UK. That's the sort of images I used to see 30 years ago of the Ganges, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. And what you have is you have local authorities, and Oxford is one of the greenest local authorities. Oxford City Council run those 15-minute cities where you can't leave one area to another without being gated by local authority cameras and so forth. The Environment Agency, which actually was set up by John Gummer ages ago when he was Environment Secretary, which was all about sustainable development and saving the planet, and yet they're failing on the basic task of anti-litter, anti-dumping, anti-fly tipping, and that's what people really want. They want their local environment to be safe. The idea that these people should save the planet by forcing people to change their behaviour. I mean, that's what's happened. Is the local politicians, the Environment Agency, it's all about saving the planet and not looking after the local environment.
Yeah. Spot on. Listen, Rupert, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Rupert Darwell is the author of Green Tyranny. Thank you to him. More on that story as well. I mean, is your kid suffering from eco-fear, eco-anger or eco-grief? There has been many TV commercials as well, hasn't there? Do you remember the one that was a dad sitting down reading a book to his kid? And I can't quite remember what the specifics were, but it was essentially about, Daddy, are we going to flood and die? And it was all of that, and it was quite powerful stuff. And I would imagine, when I was a kid, and I remember that whole thing in the kind of 80s of, he just mentioned it, Rupert. I think I could confidently say he's a bit older than me, so maybe he experienced a slightly more acute version of it. But the whole, is Russia and America going to go to war? And, there was the Two Tribes song by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And they did talk about, I think, Blue Peter, that used to, on any normal day, they'd introduce you to the latest Labrador and tell you how to make a vibrator out of a squeezy bottle or something, because that's what they used to do. On this particular episode, which was terrifying, I think they told you how to make a nuclear bunker in your back garden or something. It was like, really? What is happening there? Simon Groom, Janet Ellis, you're going apocalypse bound. Gareth is in Derbyshire. Let's get some sobriety. Gareth, back to the Home Secretary. Can she make it work? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Nice to speak to you.
You too.
Yeah, well, this is interesting, actually, because strangely enough, it could be a game changer, couldn't it? Because who would have thought Labour could bring Home Secretary in?
Yeah.
Who actually does something good. You know what I mean? Because it sounds like she's got some good ideas with this. She's going in the right direction. Now, the one person who's going to be wriggling about a little bit is it Nigel Farage and all this Reform Party? Because can you imagine if Labour actually did solve this problem with somebody who's...
Well, that would be incredible, wouldn't it? I mean, the smart money, as I'm sure you already know, Gareth, is that a load of lawyers are going to stand in the way and her own backbenchers will get the hump, and so nothing will happen. But, quite literally, if we saw evidence that on a weekly basis, thousands of people are either being deported because they shouldn't be here or not even coming here, the numbers almost disappear overnight. I'd be the first to shake her hand and go, well done, you did it.
Yeah, there is some traction in some of the things she's saying, because if you put some responsibility onto the countries, because there are still wealthy people in these countries that are supposed to be destitute, and take their freedom away. She's saying she's taking visas away or something like that from countries that don't take people back.
True.
And then, the other thing is, there's a lot of Labour MPs who know that they're going to be out of a job at the next election unless they sort this thing out. So somebody's going to get strong in it, and they're the ones who are actually in power at the moment. I know Nigel Farage keeps saying there's going to be an election in 2027, but that's for the birds, really. I think that's a David Cameron thing.
There probably isn't going to be one. There will be a wipeout next year of various councils for Labour, though.
But don't forget, aren't Labour cancelling a lot of elections? They're having these fake elections because they're talking about, I don't know what they're doing with elections, because they cancelled a lot last year because of all this government reorganisation.
Well, yeah, there was a lot that were cancelled, and they, in fairness, they would have been cancelled under the Tories as well. I know it was a great story to say it and to say, oh, look, Keir Starmer's cancelled because he thinks he's going to lose them. But there are going to be significant ones. The entirety of Wales is going to vote next year, and so is Scotland as well, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, that'll be a game changer, won't it?
I mean, that'll be absolutely... Well, it'll be massive. If Reform end up running part of the UK, as in Wales, that's going to be... Unless they muck it up, of course. There's that possibility, Gareth. That's going to be the end of Keir Starmer, isn't it, if they made a success of it?
Yeah, but the thing is, Reform, the chink in their armour is that they're a one-policy party. It's all about immigration, isn't it? We don't really know what they've got other than that, because they haven't got any serious policies about, reform and improvement and all this type of thing. Because they're starting to run some councils. They're running the one in Derbyshire, and I can't see anything particularly exciting that they're doing. They're in the same...
You never get any excitement out of your local council, do you?
No, they're chopping some trees down on the A6 and they've closed the road, but I think that's more to do with just necessity rather than reform.
Got it,
but, I think this could be interesting to watch because, let's give good luck to her because we need some proper strong policies that stop this immigration... get it under control, don't we?
Well, we will indeed, 100%. Gareth, thank you very much indeed, in Derbyshire. So, last week, somebody said to me, I say 100% quite a lot. It's one of my kind of most used phrases, which probably gets a little bit annoying to the old noggin after a while, I'd imagine. And now I'm actually aware every time I say 100%. How aware am I, however? I'd say about 90%, if I'm honest. We'll take some more comment from you in a few moments. 0344 499 1000. This comes from Darren, who says, I followed a Deliveroo cyclist yesterday in Northampton that ignored the cycle lane and used the road. The road is narrower now as there are cycle lanes on either side, so it's not easy to overtake them. And, of course, the argument that comes back, the really infuriating argument, and there's quite a few YouTube videos of this, of a car driver, a passenger, very politely widening the window down, saying to the cyclist, mate, there's a cycle lane there. And the cyclist says, yeah, I don't want to use it. Don't have to. And that's true. They don't have to. They can use the road or the cycle lane. Now, I'm going to call that out. I'm sorry. I think that is not in the spirit of the £1.3 million that your local council paid to build you, the bloke on two wheels, a cycle lane. I think it's perfectly reasonable to have an expectation that the people that might use the cycle lane would be cyclists. I don't know who else would use it. It's not really for... A moped can't even use it, only a cyclist. It's not for anyone else. I don't think it's anti-cyclist, is it? To sort of suggest maybe you should be in the cycle lane. And if nothing else, it's safer for you as the cyclist. So even though, you've got your high-vis thing on, and what is it about the multiple cameras that cyclists now have attached? They've got one on the crash helmet thing, they've got one on their lapels, they're lit up like a beacon, they've got sort of flashing lights on the back. It reminds me of a kind of 1980s roadshow that used to do your auntie's wedding reception. And you think, oh, it's a cyclist. Thought it was a guy getting his records out. 0344 499 1000. Yeah, they should use. I don't think it's anti-cyclist or facetious to say to a cyclist, you should be in the cycle lane. I think that's perfectly reasonable. They are expensive and they are safer for the cyclists. Let's all agree on that. Our lines are open. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out. Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax. We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Thank you to Jeff, who says, I also remember Blue Peter when Janet Ellis went Armageddon bound. This was it's a great turn of phrase as well. It was an era of kind of, have you got a bunker in your back garden? I mean, it's a bit rough if you lived in the tower block over the road from us. You'd have been sharing. I'm just trying to think of the image of, like, come on. Sorry, Dave, who's our tech up today, has nearly spat his tea out. It was just a crazy time. So much going on, and Two Tribes was playing, and Thatcher and Reagan were talking about the Cold War and the wall coming tumbling down, and Blue Peter were giving lessons and advice on whether or not you needed to build or dig a hole in your back garden. I hadn't been so traumatised since somebody vandalised the Blue Peter garden. Remember how that ended? That wasn't nice, was it? Wasn't there an urban myth that a well-known footballer had vandalised the Blue Peter garden? It's not true, but somebody said, because as a kid, was it like somebody like Rio Ferdinand had apparently climbed over the wall at White City at the BBC and kicked around the bricks in the garden. Sorry, Rio, if it wasn't you, because it turned out not to be true anyway. But there was an urban myth about it, but Percy Thrower was absolutely devastated. Dallas says, Ian, at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, the word is nuclear, not nuclear, not to rhyme or to. I am the biggest evangelist of that. I think I've said this was it to Dallas I said it before? It's nuclear, as in just think new and clear. I almost teach that to students of anyone. But maybe I came across as a bit too nuclear. Rather nuclear. No, it's nuclear rather than nuclear, which it isn't. We've got the voice of doom before we talk to Nick in London. This is the mystery voice. Day 6, I think it is. Nobody so far has got this mystery voice of a political nature. So you're looking for a politician, past or present, left or right, dead or alive. Who is this?
Rightly and properly.
I think it's one of the hardest. It's proving difficult so far. If you think you know who this is.
Rightly and properly.
rightly and properly. 87222, don't be phoning in, just message 87222 if you think you know who this is.
Rightly and properly.
It's a bit of a stinker, but somebody out there will know. Nick is down in London. What have you got for us, Nick? Can Labour solve the immigration crisis?
They can no more solve the immigration crisis than I can answer that who that voice is, because I can't think who it is.
OK.
No, Labour, what they're putting forward are just silly gimmicks and actually lies, which will do nothing to stop these bogus asylum seekers, and are just designed to trick the British people into thinking that Labour are actually going to do something. Yeah. But if you look at what they're proposing, it's all absolute nonsense. I mean, first of all, let's look at this thing about taking jewellery and so on. So the asylum seekers, these bogus asylum seekers that we're getting, are men crossing the channel. They don't have jewellery on them. And in any case, Labour has said that they're not going to take so-called family heirlooms.
Where is this secret bag of stash that they've got on?
It's all nonsense, isn't it? It's all complete. It's just a gimmick designed to make them sound hard.
But apparently, Nick, I mean, I defer to the official line on this somewhat, but Denmark apparently have done rather well out of this.
But they get a different type of asylum seeker. They don't get them crossing the channel. They don't get the young men of fighting age that we get. They get a different type of asylum seeker. You can't just simply take policies that work in one country and transpose them to a different country of different circumstances. It's just nonsense.
So if you're blinged up, then you're the favourable choice, so they can take your sovereigns away.
But they can't anyway, because they've said they won't take family heirlooms. So all people have got to say is, "Oh no, this is a family heirloom."
Yeah, this is Auntie Mabel gave me this on the
exactly
21st.
Exactly.
It was her dead grandfather's or something.
Exactly. So that's nonsense for a start. And then we come to the other proposal, which says that they're going to make asylum seekers wait to 20 years before they get ILR, indefinite to remain. Well, that's also a nonsense as well. That's complete nonsense, because people come if they have an incentive, and the incentive is that they think they're going to stay. And if you say you've got to wait to get ILR, they think, well, so what? I'll wait, but I'll still be in England or Britain, which is where I want to be. And we're not going to remove them anyway, because at the end, even if circumstances in their home country changed, all they've got to do at that stage, after 10 years or whatever, 15 years, they'll say, oh, well, I've now got a family life here. I've now got married. I've got children. And they'll stay under the Human Rights Convention, under the family tie.
Family thing. That was the interesting part of this announcement. The big flaw, I mean, there are many flaws in it, as you rightly say, but one of them was this idea that you wouldn't be able to, you'll be forced to wait 20 years before you can apply for permanent settlement. I mean, what sort of policy is that? Who's going to be put off by the idea that they might remain for 20 years before they got the right to apply for settlement? I mean, I'd say...
That's not the answer at all, as I said.
That's still a very attractive place to come to, isn't it?
Exactly.
You've got 2 decades or more.
Nonsense. The solution to the problem is actually very simple. It's to remove the incentive. As I said, the incentive is that they're going to stay. So all you've got to do is say that we no longer accept any asylum seekers who travelled across any safe country. We will automatically reject any application. We won't even consider it. And we'll just immediately deport them back to their country of origin. That's a very simple solution, and that would work, because people will not come here just to go straight back to square one.
I mean, it seems extraordinary. This is something governments haven't been able to solve. I genuinely, I'm calling that out as horse shine. Nick, thank you very much indeed. You've been fabulous. I share your incredulity and also annoyance at the lacklustre way, the ineptitude, the sheer uselessness of this government and previous ones in solving what should on paper be, I'm not suggesting you do it in half an hour. You can't stop boats breaking into your country. Really? We've got the voice of doom on the other side of the news. Have we got an answer? Who is this?
Rightly and properly.
87222. If you think you know, right now, let's get the latest news headlines on Talk. It's 3 o'clock.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon. Welcome back. It is the home of Common Sense. Big response, and we'll continue to take your calls, and we'll take the speech, if it happens during our programme, of Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announcing new strict rules on cracking down on illegal immigration. There's talk of the UK banning visa bans for countries that refuse to take back migrants, alongside seizing valuables, as we've just been discussing. That might turn out to be nothing. And, of course, the idea behind all of this is to reduce the numbers of people coming across. She's gone further than many before her. But will it be enough? Can Labour seriously solve the immigration problem? We'll have more on that as well. Also this afternoon, at least 500 civil servants now work in government diversity roles, with numbers doubling in some departments since Labour took office. What a surprise. This took, by the way, a 2-year freedom of information fight by a Tory MP to get the detail. And to make it worse, it's likely to be an underestimation, as some departments actually refuse to answer, which is outrageous that they couldn't answer a very simple question when it comes to how you spend other people's money. But hey, this is the civil service, by the way. The UK Health and Security Agency has warned eco-fear, eco-anger and eco-grief are harming mental health, linking climate stress to depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance misuse and violence. We'll have more on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Just a word on the fly tipping story. Cliff says, it saddened me to see the illegally fly tip mountain of rubbish. Part of the problem is local authorities. They make it too difficult, too expensive and too bureaucratic to dispose of waste. Fly tipping is always wrong, but making it so difficult to dispose of waste is also a false economy. And I know it changes, area to area. My local tip, you have to book in. So you've got to fill out the online form, which, by the way, they've now done, it remembers your details now. Up until very recently, you had to fill it all out again, which included, obviously, name, address, the kind of stuff you might be bringing or not bringing, the name of your car, the make of your car, the model of your car, the colour of your car, the registration. Now, you had to fill all of this out every single time you wanted to take a bit of old grass cuttings down there to the local skip. But yes, there's other stuff that you wouldn't be able to take unless they, even if you took a couple of old house bricks. I think that goes into the masonry pod, and a fella whips out a chip and pin machine out of his overalls, which you thought, really? Because I thought when I went down there last time, the only time actually I took bricks to a tip, I thought, somebody had said to me, they'll charge you for the bricks. And I thought, well, I filled out the form online. There was no mention of the bricks. And I opened the boot up, parked up by the brick dispensary, whatever you call it, or the brick intake, and thought, well, I'm all right here. Well, they can't charge me here. There's no cashier. And the fella comes along in a high vis, and he's got a card machine on him. So that is literally, and it was like £2.50 for 2 bricks or something stupid like that. And well, on a bigger scale, when it comes to freezers and sofas and stuff, you do have to pay the council to come and take it away. Let's move to this story. Rachel Reeves set to announce a new milkshake tax. They've come up with another one to help close the £20 billion budget shortfall. That's a lot of milkshakes have got to shift to try and make that amount of money. This ends the tax exemption on milk-based beverages because, of course, there is already a sugar tax. The move could raise an estimated 50 to 100 million quid for the Treasury, but Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride has warned the tax punishes firms already making efforts to cut sugar, moving the goalposts just to save the Chancellor's skin. Let's speak with Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor over there at The Sun. Ryan, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
This seems to be, we know budgets have leaked like a sieve for the last few years. This one has got a PhD in it, for goodness sake. We're almost getting the entire budget now. So what we seem to have here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a government that has said, oh, God, we were going to raise income tax and break our manifesto pledge. We've realised that is so lethal and toxic to us, we can't do it. So instead, we'll have a a smorgasbord of other taxes, including the milkshake tax. Is that about right, how you're reading it?
Yeah, effectively that. So I think up until last week, Rachel Reeves had laid the groundwork for raising income tax. She even held that very rare, that unusual press conference and that speech in Downing Street last week. Now, if there was a sign that someone was going to raise income tax, that was it. She said that everyone must do their bit. So the whole country was ready. This was, in some ways, many ways, pitch rolling for that income tax rise. Now, at the end of last week, Thursday night into Friday, the decision had been made in the Treasury not to do this. Now, there are two sort of schools of thought of why that decision was made. Was it because, the independent budget watchdog had come back and said things aren't quite as bad as what they seem? Now, it seems like that is the case. But also, the second reason, the political backlash from those within Cabinet, Labour MPs, had been so much that the government, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, just couldn't go ahead with that income tax rise. You can just imagine any time a backbench MP, any MP knocking on doors in a Labour constituency, asking whether they should be trusted, they just wouldn't be, because Labour went into that last election promising not to raise income tax, VAT, national insurance, and I think the thing is with this, it was so totemic that to go back on that, it wasn't just a small part of the manifesto; it was the central part of it. So to go back on that, it would have hit levels of trust.
And of course, it would have come in a long line of disappointing moments. It was only half an hour after becoming Prime Minister, of course, that they decided to scrap winter fuel allowance. There were other things, and there's been no honeymoon period for Starmer. And he's up against it, because I was trying to think of any positive news that's really come out of this administration. It's quite hard. I'm sure there's something in there somewhere. I'm being generous here, Ryan, but it's been tough. So something as totemic as breaking the biggest of your manifesto pledges, they wouldn't have recovered from, would they?
No, I mean, look at where they are in the polls. They really are trailing behind reform. Now, it's not just on the right of the Labour Party that Sir Keir Starmer has to look out. He's also got to worry about on his left, whether it's the rise of the Greens, it's the Liberal Democrats, whether it's this new Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana outfit, your party, that he has to be concerned about. So he really is kind of stuck in the middle. Now, Sir Keir may point to successes, on the world stage that he may well have been central to, but domestically, things that have been so tough, whether it's, you can go back to, as you say, winter fuel, go back to national insurance increases at the budget last year, losing a succession of ministers, whether it's Angela Rayner, losing your US ambassador, Peter Mandelson, and then you had the botched briefing war last week against Wes Streeting. So the Prime Minister, maybe it's his own fault. Many people would say that it is, but he can't catch a break, and he's falling behind drastically in the polls. And the trouble is, unless there's a good budget, the end could come sooner than what we think.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I know Farage is predicting a 2027 election, and who knows? I mean, and then of course, between now and 2027, we've got the local elections next year. That is pretty seismic stuff, because we're not talking about the odd parish council. We're talking Wales, Scotland, mayoralties. I mean, this is big, Ryan.
Yeah, it's going to be the big electoral test. Now, next May, there's going to be elections in Scotland, Wales, and all across England in county councils, town halls. And if that goes badly for Sir Keir, I spoke to one senior Labour figure this morning, said that, will he even get to May? Will the patience just run out before then? If it's a bad budget, it's a bad May, people realise that, the reception they receive in their constituencies at weekends when they go back is not positive at all. People are just going to lose patience, and they are going to look for an alternative. There's a few contenders. People who'd point to Angela Rayner, would they point to Shabana Mahmood, would they point to Wes Streeting? So these people, if they see that the writing's on the wall, if they're not already, they will be positioning themselves and trying to sort of gain the trust of fellow MPs. So when the moment does come, to launch a campaign, that they will be ready.
I wonder, just to go back to where we began this, Ryan, a final point, these smaller taxes, I mean, they're not small in terms of, they're eye-watering, the numbers, 50 million, 100 million, but, they're in the grander scheme of things, having, 24 small taxes out there rather than a big tax. Do the electorate, I mean, one would assume they do some kind of surveying on this. Do you think the electorate prefer that? It's a tax on what you're spending rather than a tax on what you're earning, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the big trouble, if you raise income tax, everyone knows where they stand. It's clean, and also it guarantees income into the Treasury, so the Treasury know where they are. And I think the trouble is when you've got maybe 10, 12 smaller taxes that raise a similar amount, probably 2 billion, 3 billion here, I think you start to annoy real swathes of society. So everywhere you look, there's a constant reminder that you're being taxed, whether there's arguments, there's proposals about maybe fruit machines in pubs being taxed with this machine games duty. Now people just need to look over in the corner in the pub and realise, oh, that's really hitting the pubs. The taxes have gone up here or there. So I think that is the trouble with not just having sort of one central plank of income. And I think they have to be really, really careful. And the trouble is, if a budget is well delivered on the actual budget day, which is next Wednesday, sometimes that's seen as a bad thing because it soon unravels. Give it 24, 48 hours. When we go through the small print, things can go very, very wrong very, very quickly.
Yeah, they can indeed. It's not going to be dull. Ryan, thank you as ever. Ryan Sabey is the Deputy Political Editor over there at The Sun. Thank you to him. Let's go back to more of your comments on this issue. This is Norman in Dartford. What do you got for us, Norman?
Well, last Friday, I thought your programme really needed doing. Explain to people exactly where we are. The government is out of control of the economy. Mm-hmm. You had Oscar Redrop, was his name?
Correct, yeah.
And David Buick.
That's right.
And both said the same. The first people in control are the bond market.
Yeah.
They hold every card there is. Now, whatever she does, unless she's convincing them that we're going in the right direction,
sure,
we're down the Swanee.
Yeah, I mean that word that came up, didn't it? Confidence. And if the market doesn't trust the government, and look, there's a lot of smart money for many other reasons as well to say that we might be going through a bit of a storm economically next year. I don't know, but I keep hearing that. This is going to do nothing to ease that.
Well, nor is what all these little kites they keep flying when they're going to do this bit. I spoke to you some weeks ago. The only fair way, without I can see, without unintended consequences, is income tax.
Yeah.
Because the poorest pay the least, the rich pay the most. Anything else, you're in trouble with.
But that's what I keep saying, though, Norman. Do we need to... Have we got to have a really uncomfortable grown-up conversation about how we finance? And it can work both ways, because you can say, look, some people are going to have to pay more. It's just a fact. There's no other way to do it. We can mess around with milkshake taxes and God knows what. The reality is we're absolutely skint. You've got to pay a bit more. However, you've also got to renegotiate your expectations of public services. The NHS is not going to be a box ticker for every single ailment or illness. You've got to look at it as a service that does provide, it provides efficiently, but don't expect it to do everything. You get your head around that it's only going to do so much, or education, or whatever.
Well, I'm sure there are people in the Treasury know what to do, but the government, they haven't got the courage to do anything. They want to play about with these silly things like milkshake tax. Well, we're talking about an economy in trouble.
Yeah. They're going for the milk. They came for our milkshakes.
Are they serious, Ian?
Yeah.
Are they really serious to run the country and fly all these silly kites? I mean, years ago, you'd have never heard anything about the budget, ever.
Yeah.
It was
nothing. It was never. There was no leaking. In fact, it was. It was illegal, wasn't it?
Yeah, I worked in a place where we printed it.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Did you ever get a read of it?
Well, you could read it. You could read it, but I mean,
if you could be bothered,
it was under the Official Secrets Act.
Yeah, that's
true. We had severe security there.
I bet.
And nothing ever got out.
Yeah, well, that's how it worked, wasn't it? I mean, it was because of the market, the sensitivities.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but you never heard anything, not a word, and no one spoke about it, and all the waste was locked up, and it was some outfit. That's how important it is. Yeah. Now we get all these flights. We don't do this. Oh, we're going to raise income tax. I just do not understand what they're doing. I do not. And your programme last Friday, I thought, thank goodness we've got people on here who are going to tell people, because I can't, because they don't know, tell people exactly what the problem is. We are borrowing money to pay interest on what we're already.
Which is, and that is growing by the day. We're in an impossible place. Norman, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. If you're a big milkshake. But by the way, I went to McDonald's yesterday with my little boy through the drive-through. Run out of milkshakes. Is that like a no-no in the Mackie D world? Surely you can't run. There might have been a McFlurry there, but it's not quite the same. He just wanted I didn't want a milkshake. I'm not a big milkshake fan. When I was a kid, didn't really have. We had this thing called. I mean, they still do Nesquik. You still buy Nesquik, can't you? Nesquik to me. I mean, we never had Nesquik, and it took me and my sister ages to get my mum to buy some Nesquik. I don't know whether she thought it was like heroin or something. I don't know what she thought the hell it was, but she wouldn't buy any. And going to a mate's on the way home from school one day, had a Nesquik. Oh, it was the tastiest thing I've ever tasted in my flipping life. Mum, get some Nesquik. And then one day we came home from school. She opened up the cupboard, and it was just I said, I'm back there right now. She might as well have got Rod Hull and Emu in the kitchen. That's how amazing it was as kids. Nesquik, there it was on the top shelf. Fantastic. That's how life has changed since the 1970s. Strawberry flavour every day of the week. I'm not eating any of that chocolate nonsense because I don't believe it's real. Whereas the strawberry flavour was made, I think, of solely crushed strawberries. No chemicals are added to the Nesquik empire. Who knows? We've got the voice of doom. This was the voice we played you just before the news.
Rightly and properly.
Very simple mystery voice thing. Has anybody got it right? These are some of the guesses. Jeffrey Archer, John Knott, Jeremy Thorpe, Anthony Mayer, Alex Salmon, Gordon Brown, Norman St. John Stevens, which keeps coming up. It's not the right answer. Nicholas Soames, Anthony Barber. All of these are wrong. Roy Jenkins, Peter Lilly. No, no, and no. But have we got a winner? Dave, can we hear the voice again, please?
Rightly and properly.
No, we don't have a winner. There you go, there's the drama. Come on. Which means Dave has not got to make one for tomorrow. Although I'm not here for tomorrow. I'm not here tomorrow, or what's the day after tomorrow? Wednesday. I'll be doing months of the year next. I'm not here tomorrow on Wednesday, but Jonathan Gullis, former Conservative MP, is going to be here. Now a regular on the team sheet here at Talk. Always puts on a good gig when he fills in for us. He's going to be here tomorrow and Wednesday. A Voice of Doom returns, therefore, on Thursday. So have a think on, but we haven't got a right answer. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
when Reform announced policies that were milder than Shabana Mahmood is confirming today in the House of Commons, we were deemed racist and bigots. But now the current Home Secretary can announce it, and apparently that's all fine. The pure hypocrisy of this desperate Starmer regime in its bunker in number 10. But I think maybe Shabana Mahmood has, maybe she's actually now in the wrong party. Maybe she needs to cross the floor.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 344 499 1000. Something rather sort of vaguely amusing happened here. Won't bore you with the details. It's not that good. This is Ian down in London. Ian, how you doing?
Not bad, but I don't know if it's like we should be shouting out, doomed, we're all doomed.
We're all doomed, yeah. We should shout that daily as we open our front doors, I think, because that would probably nicely encapsulate the mood of the nation. What do you make then of Labour? Are they about to turn it around, though, Ian? Could this be the moment when you go, wow, look who solved the immigration problem? It was only Keir Starmer's government.
Well, to me, and I love a conspiracy theory, that basically she will announce it. She knows that quite simply her backbenchers will say, go take a jump.
Yeah.
Conservatives won't vote for it for the simple reason they wouldn't want to keep them in power, right? The Liberal Democrats won't want to do it. And then, as you keep saying, she'll say, we did try, but there was no hope of ever getting it through.
Yeah. And it's not even... even if everything she's mentioned happened, it's not really foolproof that you're going to stop people crossing the channel.
No, because as you say, straight away, you remember those two, who were they? Starmer and Sadiq Khan. How did they make their names in the first place? There's always these liberal solicitors and lawyers to get them off the thing.
Yeah.
And they're all ganging. They're all sort of like in their chambers at the moment, rubbing their hands, thinking, "Great, whatever she does, we're going to make money from."
Yeah.
And that's it. It's never going to get through. It's all bluff to take it away and blame anybody else other than them, than those ones at the top.
Do you think we're more... I don't know, it's kind of a slightly different point in, but are we more... do we expect more from government than we used to because we talk about it more?
Well, I know that when I was a kid and used to look on TV and used to see them on the front benches and everything else, they always used to look the part.
Yeah.
These ones do not look the part. Not in one iota.
There is I know that there is, you do project things onto people, don't you, once they're in power. I never thought, I still don't think Gordon Brown looked like a statesman, but he looked a bit, when I remember seeing him in Parliament when he was Chancellor, and because he was a bit sort of school teacherish, a bit scruffy and, a bit sweaty, and not in a, I don't mean that in a mean way, but he looked kind of flustered, his hair was a bit kind of studious and all the rest of it. And then he became Prime Minister, and I thought, he actually sort of does a little bit look like a Prime Minister. So, but this lot sort of don't really, do they? They've never got past that. They still look like a kind of student warm-up act for the real thing.
But you take it, when we looked at it with my age, you looked at them in black and white, and you saw whether it was Harold Wilson or Macmillan and all these sort of types, and even like a little bit later or earlier, Hume and all that, they looked the part. Even, they used to take the mickey on Spitting Image. John Major was like Spitting Image, it was always in grey.
Yeah.
Because he was greying down.
Eating peas.
Yeah. On the two Davids, right? Also the same thing. But there's nobody of that sort of calibre that actually stands up and you think, yeah, I'll take sort of like, I'll listen to him.
Yeah.
The only one that's got any sort of charisma is Farage, and also the other one that I think has got to is Tice. But they can say, to be honest, at the moment, they can say what they want because they're not in power. So they can get away with it.
It's and there's a big old to-do list, right? There's a minute they show up. It's not... the problem with any policy in government, even the easiest ones, is, I always use this phrase, it's like turning an oil tanker around to make a difference. They've got to make a difference quickly, right?
That's right. It's funny you should say that. I always remember saying to my dad, God rest his soul, that he wanted to go on a cruise once, and he said, I'll take you with. So I said, well, you've got to get the insurance. They quoted him about £500 for the insurance, and they quoted me 40 quid. He said, why is the difference? I said, Dad, there's a little bit more chance of a 90-year-old having to tell them to turn the ship around and go back into port than there is of a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
Right? and that's how it is.
Yeah.
But they are really in trouble.
Yeah.
They know it, and quite simply, I think if he could, the way he's looking these days, Starmer, and the rest of them on the front bench, I think if he could, but he's too worried what would come behind him, he'd love to jump ship.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. Ian, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Back to the Blue Peter Garden that we referenced earlier. Kaz says, and it's interesting, after I sort of loosely mentioned that there was an urban myth going around that Rio Ferdinand had vandalised, the Blue Peter Garden basically got vandalised, and they kicked over some, I think there was a statue of one of the dogs that used to be on the show, and they'd thrown some bricks in the pond, and I think maybe some of the fish might have sadly died. It was pretty horrible stuff when you think about it. And of course it was only a wall in White City that somebody had climbed over, and there was an urban myth. I said it was Rio Ferdinand, apparently it was Les Ferdinand that was the urban myth about. Kaz says, I thought Wise was there as well, as in Dennis Wise. And I made this very same point to Finn. Kaz says he was there with the Blue Peter Garden vandalism due to his height challenge. Wise couldn't get over the wall because he's only about 4'1", and that's why Ferdinand was involved to give him a leg over. But speculation, it is just a speculation and rumour. They were not involved in any shape or form. Blue Peter, by the way, is still on the telly. But how many kids... My kids have never watched Blue Peter. If I said, do you know what Blue Peter is? They wouldn't have a clue what it was. Finn, did you ever watch Blue Peter growing up? Finn says he did. I'm quite encouraged by that. He says he had a golden badge. Because didn't they give away the gold badge for special stuff? I wrote to them once and asked them for a badge. And I got a letter back. I didn't know this at the time, from Biddy Baxter, who was the editor of Blue Peter, who used to handwrite back to every... I think it might have been typed, but she personally wrote back to every kid that wrote to Blue Peter. And she told me to shove off. She said, in no uncertainty. She said, you have to do something to get a badge. You can't just get a badge. And I'm grateful to Tom, who's AI'd me into a picture of John Noakes, Peter Purvis and Valerie Singleton. Although because AI can't quite do real-life images of someone, I'm not sure that actually looks like me at all, Tom. But no, that's definitely not me. But it is a resemblance. You might go, is he related to Collins? You might do. Blue Peter was amazing. It was an incredible part of most kids' childhood, and it was a kind of staple and a conduit. I think that's why it was comfortable. I didn't like everything about it. It was a bit... Some families, because there was a programme called Magpie, which was on the other side. Dave will remember some of this. And if you were a bit more rebellious, you watched Magpie. If you were a little bit conservative, you watched Blue Peter. That was the sort of divvying up. And it was a little bit like that. And you saw stuff on there that wasn't quite real life. They would often have a school turn up to do something in the studio, and you'd be watching it, and they would, John Noakes would go, and now, to finish off the show, it's the St Mary's High School Sheffield motorcycle display team. And you'd think, what the... Really? We've barely got a football team at our school. How have they got one of these? Probably some very tasty private school or something. You would have these little moments. But there was something about it that was cosy pair of slippers time. It feeds into that wider discussion about the BBC and licence fees when we talk about, what it used to mean. And it meant that, because back then, I think it was a Monday and a Thursday Blue Peter was on. And you'd look forward to those days. And a Friday, Crackerjack was on. And you can even name those programmes that came on about 5:30, like the Morphs and those kind of programmes. Saturday was obviously the big ones. That was the Saturday Superstores or the multicoloured swap shops or all of that stuff. And that worked great because there was only 3 channels on the telly. So it felt great. It felt part of you. You were connected to it. You're part of a club. But, of course, those days are long gone, and you can romanticise about it. And then in the evening, of course, you had Starsky and Hutch and Parkinson, the Generation Game and all that stuff. And Jim will fix it before people realise that he was an absolute wrong and a filthy child molester. Before we knew all of that, you know, this was great TV. And it was great, and it sealed a sort of unity of the nation. But not because of any individual brilliance. It was because it was, along with ITV, it was all that was there. You couldn't make those arguments now, and that's why you have to revise the BBC licence. You can't keep asking people for nearly 200 quid a year for something that many don't even watch. 0344 499 1000. Bring back Crystal, Tips and Alistair. That's all I'm saying. And there's a lot of you scratching your head going, is he on something? Crystal, Tips and who? Do you remember that, Dave? Yeah? See, Dave does. And Dave's 35 years older than me. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to Lenny in Ashford shortly. Lots still to come. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 25 to 4. Let's move to this story, and it's back to our old friend vaping and tobacco. The Tobacco and Vapes Bill, which would ban tobacco sales to anyone born after 2009, faces challenges as it could breach post-Brexit agreements governing Northern Ireland. The case illustrates how, despite leaving the EU, British law in some areas remains intertwined with European frameworks. Let's get a word from Sir Robert Buckland, KC, former Solicitor General and Northern Ireland Affairs. Good afternoon to you, Robert. Welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Nice to have you with us. I actually thought, and I've kind of obviously somehow missed something. I thought this proposed bill had been done away with. I thought they weren't going with this if you're born after a certain age thing, but apparently it's alive and well.
Yeah, it is. New Zealand passed a similar law, but then the new government in New Zealand got rid of it. So now the UK is the only country in the world that's going for a generational ban. Our friends in the Irish Republic wanted to do something similar, but guess what? They were advised that it would be against EU law and the single market law on tobacco products for them to have a generational ban. So they're going for raising the ban to 21. And you can already see perhaps some of the problems that could exist between Northern Ireland and the Republic along that border, where if you're in a few years' time, you're caught short for a Siggy, you can cross the border to Donegal and get fags, perfectly lawfully, but not in Northern Ireland. And, what does that mean? Well, I think it means a bit of a black market, potentially, to say the least.
I think it is.
Is pokery we've seen before in that part of the world.
Is there evidence that this kind of legislation actually reduces smoking?
Look, there is evidence to suggest that smoking rates do fall off if you prevent youngsters from getting access to tobacco at an early age. I think, the fact that Britain is now the only country to be doing a generational ban, that is, by the time, our kids are in their 50s, let's say, they won't be able to buy cigarettes. I think we're in a very different world from the one where quite clearly and understandably we want, for public health reasons, to try and make sure our kids don't get, hooked on tobacco.
I mean, I get that, but I suppose it does mean that people will be ID'd all their life, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, in years to come, when, people of our maturity, should we say, Ian, I'm not going to presume how old you are, but...
26.
I'm older than I look. I accept that. Are you going to be ID'd at 57? You know? And look, we know how the world works, and it's a sad reality that if people want a product, they'll get a product. And my worry is that in Northern Ireland in particular, and I've been looking at this carefully from a legal point of view.
Sure.
And I think people on the show, watching the show know all about the Windsor framework and the protocol. Look, EU law still applies for many reasons in Northern Ireland, and one of those laws is this Tobacco Products Directive. And I think that it's all very well for the government to be passing UK-wide legislation, but they could come a cropper in court if they're found that, in fact, this particular provision now breaches EU law. And they need to come straight about this and tell House of Lords, who are dealing with this bill at the moment, they're debating it, that ministers need to explain how it is they're going to overcome this legal hurdle, rather than just passing a law and then finding that they get embroiled in legal arguments in the courts over in Northern Ireland. That would be a good look, I think, and the government needs to act now to create clarity.
Yeah, and I guess this is, there's lots of areas, as you rightly say, this curious, clunky and almost immovable problem with the Brexit deal, and it was debated all over the place for forever. But it is these kind of issues that are cropping up all the time. This one happens to be about tobacco, and obviously there's many grumpy people in the north that are disappointed that this is the case and how it is. But nonetheless, it is where we're at, and I guess this is going to carry on for the rest of time unless Ireland becomes united, if that's the not too controversial a term.
Well, that would be one way of dealing with it. Not one personally I would support as a unionist, but look, there are solutions to this, and they're political ones. There's a joint committee that exists between the UK and the EU, where UK ministers and Commission officials can negotiate to decide what's actually in the protocol, and things can come out of that. So it's not beyond the wit of both sides to actually negotiate an exemption here. But that needs to be done, I think, quickly before this law comes into force in order to make things regular. Otherwise, I think they will fall foul of this problem. And, it's another avoidable banana skin, frankly.
Indeed.
If I was in government, I'd be wanting to try and avoid, bearing in mind all the banana skins they're slipping on at the moment. Do they really need another one like this? Get it right now. And then whatever one's view, at least the law is tidy. And hopefully you don't end up with this black market that I think is going to develop.
Should this have been worked out in the... I don't want to go into too many other territories, but should this have been worked out, Robert, in the Good Friday or the Belfast Agreement, that, bearing in mind, when you consider when Blair and, Clinton and Mo Molan and everybody was involved in that momentous moment... Prior to that, many political parties, including the Lib Dems, had talked about having a referendum on membership of the European Union. It's not as if it was a new thing. I know it didn't happen for many years later, but it had been talked about lots of times from all parties. I would have thought someone would have slapped in a clause somewhere, or certainly raised in any other business, what happens if there is a referendum on leaving or not leaving the EU. Maybe it came up and they thought, we'll deal with that when we come to it.
I genuinely think, we're going back to 1998, and I don't think anybody had in their mind then anything other than the fact that both the UK and the Republic would be in the same single market. I don't think we can give people that sort of clairvoyance back then. But I tell you what did happen back then was that there was an acknowledgement that, rightly or wrongly, the Republican Catholic community did not have the same faith in the police and the security services as the loyalist unionist community. And there needed, therefore, to be a shared sense of human rights and civil liberties. That, I think, was achieved by the Good Friday Agreement. And, of course, that then led to that important clause in the Windsor Framework, Article 2, that says there shall be no diminution and reduction in those rights. And that's where you get the problem, emerging. I think those of us, and I campaigned for Remain. I think everybody knows that. I did say at the time that dealing with the Northern Ireland border was going to be a really tricksy problem. And I think for those people who said it was going to be a walk in the park, it was never going to be that. It was always going to have this imperfection. And I think what ministers have to do now is look at each issue on its merits and try and negotiate exemptions so that people and businesses in Northern Ireland are not disadvantaged. Because at the moment, despite the improvement of the Windsor Framework, we've still got too many businesses being disadvantaged in that part of what is our United Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely bang on. Listen, Robert, great to have you on, sir. We will speak again. Thank you for your time, Sir Robert Buckland, KC, former Solicitor General, former chair of the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee. I don't know what made me think, every now and again there's a little bit of knowledge that, as just alluded to, I thought they ditched this idea. Did it come in originally under the Tories? So if you're born after 2009, and that includes, thankfully, both my kids, you will not be able to buy cigarettes or even vapes other than on the black market. So you would be persistently and continually ID'd to buy either of those products. They'd have to make that an automatic something somehow. Don't know how they would do it. Let's go back to your call, Shabana Mahmood. We were expecting her to speak at around about 3:30. Now, this is how it works in government for some reason. Finn, our producer, checked and double-checked. He's on the blower to the Home Office going, right, come on, see, you have your contacts there. He's getting the data, the rundown. They're saying, Finn, don't worry, the Home Secretary is going to speak at 3:30. The special advisors are giving the grid 3:30, she's going to speak. Great, we pencil it in the diary. We put a show together, and in there it says 3:30, Home Secretary's going to speak. It's never bang on, but it might be a minute or two afterwards. Now we're hearing 5:45. Actually jumped from 3:30 to 5. What happened in the meantime? Parliamentary time is usually kind of written down, and, they've got it all worked out. 5:45. I'm sure you will hear it, though, with Peter Cardwell later. Back with Lenny in Ashford on this point of what the Home Secretary might announce. Lenny, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, I can understand why there's a delay. If it was straight and honest, it would be easy to sort out.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a load of lies there, they've got to try and justify it.
Yeah.
And that is the problem they got, because it's so, I can't believe it is so stupid, where the words have no value at all, because it's totally against the mentality of Starmer and the lawyers. This is a lawyer's paradise.
100%.
The amount of time. Pardon?
100%, I said.
Yeah, and this is, all his mates are going to earn a fortune.
Yeah.
Because, it could be when all the internal fighting really gets underway. Today, it's only been sparring. But this time, there's going to be a lot of internal fighting, and it could be that Starmer's put the last nail in his coffin.
Well, it's interesting because as we've been speaking, Lenny, the government have just released a 32-page dossier outlining its reforms on the asylum system in full. The document is topped by a foreword from Keir Starmer, who begins his contribution by stating the world has changed and it's our responsibility to renew the application of those values as new challenges arise. Now, Lenny, does that sound like him acknowledging that, you know, what we used to think as Labour politicians we've got to rethink, which might piddle off his backbenchers?
Well, I don't think so, because with Starmer, he talks in monologues. He never answers a question. You know, and that's what happens. He stand up and he's got loads of prepared monologues, and he never. And that is the beginning of a monologue. And all it is that the one thing that will not change is Starmer and Labour's mentality.
Yeah.
All his life, he has protected immigrants. And the immigration to this country.
Yeah.
And he's not going to change his ways on that.
Yeah, spot on. Listen, Lenny, great stuff. Thank you. He's not going to lifelong philosophy, very dear-held views on this area. You're right, Lenny. He's not going to change it. Thank you to Lady Anne, who's not a Robert Buckland fan. Robert was a Remainer, of course. Lady Anne says, Robert Buckland is the anti-British Brexit, I won't use the word she uses, who did all he could to keep Northern Ireland tied to Brussels. See how he refers to the Republic of Ireland as our friends. They are not our friends, says Lady Anne. I disagree with that, but I know what you're saying about politically. Tony Blair did a deal with the devil, she says, and it's Northern Ireland, Ian, not the North. Yeah, I mean, it's the one argument, isn't it? Northern Ireland, uniting Ireland is, I mean, that's going to come up again at some point. I'm surprised it hasn't done. I mean, it's still alive and well in many areas of political discourse, of course, but in any meaningful way. I think that will return to the news agenda in the next 5 years in a very serious manner, not as just, you know, some backbencher. Isn't it time we had a vote? No, it's going to be big. It'd be interesting to know which way it goes. I know which way Lady Anne would like it to go, and I think I know which way Robert Buckland would. 034, maybe we should get them both together. 0344 499 1000. Brad says, do you think there's any connection between the government's push for digital ID and the generational ban on purchasing cigarettes? It's a good point, because one would assist the other, wouldn't it? John says, I take it they're not smashing the gangs now then? No, I think that's gone by the wayside. Nigel in Reading, has the idea of a pre-budget purdah been cancelled? We never had as much kite flying as this under previous governments, and very odd the current government doesn't see the serious damage being done by not keeping their half-baked ideas under wraps. Was it a George Osborne budget that was kind of leaked to the Standard, or a big chunk of it? I think it was Osborne. And this was seen as almost a crime. And the Speaker, which I assume would have been Burko at the time, wanted some serious answers, and rightly so. I mean, this is not the way it works. But what they used to do is, you know, they started to do is leak a little bit of it, like the Sunday papers, the Sunday before the budget day, before the Wednesday. They'd started to do that, and it seemed to get a free pass. But this, as Nigel's saying, this is a whole different ballgame. I mean, it's just they're literally testing it. What about we've got a milkshake tax. What do you think? Oh, yeah, most people are saying no, so we'll cancel that. We'll have a different day. Pasty tax, bring back the pasty tax. Remember that one? 0344 499 1000.
when Reform announced policies that were milder than Shabana Mahmood is confirming today in the House of Commons, we were deemed racist and bigots. But now the current Home Secretary can announce it, and apparently that's all fine. The pure hypocrisy of this desperate Starmer regime in its bunker in number 10. But I think maybe Shabana Mahmood maybe she's actually now in the wrong party. Maybe she needs to cross the floor.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, it is. 5 to 4. Peter Cardwell is going to be here with Drive very shortly. We'll talk to him in just a moment. This one in from Amanda, who says, Labour take us for fools. They have no intention of stopping the illegal crossings. They know perfectly well that securely detaining all of them in Nightingale-type built accommodation would solve all the problems. I think it probably would, actually. I think it would fundamentally solve the problems. Even Mahmood has acknowledged, along with many others, and we keep referencing Emmanuel Macron, the French president, because he made the point you've got to get rid of the pull factor, and there is a big pull factor. If you think you are going to be accommodated at some level, almost instantaneously, the minute you arrive in the UK, you're going to get board and lodgings. It might not be ideal, and I have to say, even if you did put me up in a plush hotel, the idea that I'd have to share a room with 3 others would do my nut in. However, I can see that is a massive attraction. And if you stop that attraction, I think you begin to stop the boats. You've got to stop that attraction. This one from Mark, who says, I'm not clinically depressed because of eco matters. It's because of Starmer stress, Starmer anger and Starmer drug addiction. I think there will be people, that's a good point, Mark. I think there might be people who end up, claiming some kind of benefit because they have been made anxious by the sheer heady levels of ineptitude of this government. I mean, I think you could make a really reasonable argument around that. This one from No Name Given, who says, B, the UK implement stupid DEI targets on all government and healthcare systems, create additional layers of management to support such stupidity. Fast forward 20 years and scratch head wondering why the government systems don't work and are financially broke. It's a fair point. And Dan in Hartlepool, as previously stated, the Navy won't interfere with boats. However, there's no stopping us as a country creating a larger, more powerful Coast Guard along the lines of the US, who have armed gunships and boats. Yeah, apparently there's a reason you can't do that either. I don't know. Peter Cardwell is a former Rear Admiral in the Royal Navy and would know all about the logistics of this.
Yes.
When you were running the Ark Royal, did you ever get a call from government saying, Rear Admiral, take your boat down to the channel and get this thing sorted?
First of all, it's a ship.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
that's
the key thing. That's the key thing.
Take your big ship down to the channel and get this one sorted. Right, did you ever get that message?
They didn't actually, although the person was from Yorkshire who rang me, or Manchester, depending on where that accent was. Somewhere in the north.
It was very generic.
Very generic northern.
Oh, he's got a lovely boat, as our Peter.
And a whippet. And cool in the bath. Yes.
And a whippet, yes. You've got a big show this afternoon.
Yes,
I only
we
know
do.
that because I've seen how diligent your massive team are.
Well, they're small but perfectly formed. We've got a big Talk exclusive coming on rape gangs. I can't say too much about it at the moment, but I will give some details after 4 o'clock. Big exclusive coming, an interview that we've been working on for a while on that. Ryan, the producer, has worked that out. We're also, of course, talking about the immigration plans the government has and asking, will they actually get through the Labour ranks? The Conservatives say they're going to support them on them, but what about Labour? They're already about 20 different Labour figures who are not happy.
I wonder how Reform would vote on that.
Yeah, I think they may well see it as a step in the right direction. I know Jeremy spoke to Richard Tice earlier. We'll be playing that. Also, Maxie Allen will join us. He was on the show a couple of months ago. He complained about his daughter's school a number of times. Next thing he knew, the police were on his doorstep. 6 police officers arrested him in front of his young child, and the police have now admitted that was totally wrong, and they've given him and his wife a £20,000 payout. So we'll be talking to him in the studio and also Trump's former campaign chairman Rich Gates about the BBC saying it's determined to fight any Trump legal action. So there's a lot coming up, and the show is going to be a meaty show. We're also going to talk about young people and votes. Teenagers may vote at school under a election overhaul. We'll have a pollster and a 16-year-old who's going to tell us about whether they would vote in school.
Yeah. Of all the stories where, you know, someone has had their door either knocked down or a big knock